Oh, okay.
But you probably could register your license plate too and just say you're a planning commission.
It's 6:30. It's 6:32. I'm going to call the Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 14th, 2025 to order. Let's start with the roll call.
Commissioner Moschelli?
Yes.
Commissioner Newman?
Yes.
Commissioner Azar?
Here.
Commissioner Brazen?
Here.
Commissioner Hall?
Here.
Commissioner Sobakatani?
Here.
Commissioner Polika?
Here.
Vice Chair Showalter?
Here.
Motion to excuse Chair Foster until she arrives.
Second.
Brazen and Moschelli?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion stands. Next, I'd like to, we're going to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have the approval of the minutes from March 19th, 2025.
Motion to approve the minutes with one edit, that I arrived late, which doesn't show in the minutes. It just shows that I was absent from the entire meeting.
You know what time you arrived?
We did make a note of it.
Yeah, as I walked in, Chair Foster mentioned.
Yeah, I have it written on my notes too.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, 8:30, maybe not even that late, 8 o'clock. But I had listened to it on the way in.
So there's a first, was there a second? I'm sorry.
Support, or second.
Okay. We have a motion from,
I did.
a motion from Councilman Polika and support from Commissioner Brazen to accept the meeting minutes as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now it's time for the call to audience. So during the call to audience, this is for anyone to come up to the podium to discuss anything that is not on the agenda. Anything that is on the agenda, which is the public hearing on the zoning ordinance amendment, there will be time for public hearing during that. But anyone who has something besides the immediate agenda topic can have a few minutes.
Good evening. I'm Jenny Beaker. I'm a Ferndale resident and also the executive director of the DDA. And this has been on my to-do list for months. Oh,
Real quick, can you state your address?
do I have to give my address? Yeah. Yep. 300 East 9 Mile. This has just been on my to-do list for many months now, is just to come and introduce myself. I know several of your faces, but not all of your faces. I was the resident member on the the zoning steering committee. What was that called for Zone Ferndale? I'm a graduate of Fern and Learn, which is what got me interested in being on the steering committee, and then kind of segued into a role for which I am very passionate about downtown Ferndale, so it makes sense. And like I said, just wanted to introduce myself. My office is right across the hall. I have a staff person, Summer Reilly. We have our DDA board meetings the second Thursday in the morning of each month, so we'll actually be meeting this Thursday instead of last Thursday. But anything we can do from the downtown, please let me know. I appreciate the attention y'all gave to the zoning ordinances, the accommodations, and clarifying a lot of things that affect our downtown businesses and people's experience in the downtown. So thank you all for the work that you do.
Thank you. And not seeing anyone else approaching the podium, I'm going to close the call to audience at 6:36. Now we have a public hearing, which is for zoning ordinance amendments. So I'm going to let Roger from City explain.
I have to load this up. All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Showalter. So, as you recall, the Planning Commission spent a lot of time adopting the new zoning code, which was adopted by City Council on December 16th, 2024. I said through that process many times that we would come forward with code amendments in due time, because as we apply the code, we'll find things that don't work well. We're going to find additional grammatical errors, formatting errors, or things that should just be simplified. So in the packet, I have uploaded a Word document PDF, one titled Red Line, so you can see the red line comments, and one titled Clean. Of course, I can't stop reviewing it, so post that, I reviewed it again, but pages 1 through 71. So I sat down today, read every word again through pages 1 through 71 of the clean version, and had some additional changes. But I really feel confident when reviewing that off the clean version that we'll be in a really good spot. So what I'd like to do is actually jump towards a version you don't have. It's called Clean 2. There's not that many changes. Run through them. If nobody has really concerns, then we can go back to the other one, and I'll combine them. So I'm going to start with this new version. It's on the screen. And
so, sorry to interrupt, but so I know that we've had time to review the Clean 1 version, but none of us have seen the Clean 2 version. I'm not sure if I feel comfortable to vote on something that I haven't had time to review.
I think if you let me run through them, you'll find that most of them are probably not issues. If there's any the commission doesn't feel comfortable with, and these are just my recommendations, so any of them that you don't like, you guys can say, remove that, we don't like that. But scrolling down, you can see I have no red. Oh, no.
Also, through the chair, are we going to, after we're presented with the changes, do the public the audience for this item? Okay.
I'd also ask if you could increase the percentage of the document so
you can read it?
or the screen, yeah.
Problem is, I don't think this is
My
right.
old, yeah, down at the bottom right, there's a bar that says 100%. You can go up to,
I will, give me 1 second, because I don't.
do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but I'm looking for, this isn't the version. I don't know why I don't see any changes in this one.
You need to view it as, or review? You need to click on the review to show the,
On a totally different computer.
oh.
But I went through and made my changes today, and I'm wondering if I didn't save them. At which point, well, not going to be there.
So someone also who is in, well, we're looking for that, so just discussion amongst, is this something that we can we vote on the version 2 since it hasn't been publicly posted?
Well, sure, because you guys, this is staff's proposed changes.
But it hasn't been publicly posted on the website, so I don't know.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter because as we're reviewing it, if Commissioner Azar suggests that maybe we change this, and we say, oh, okay, that makes sense. So that would be a change that wasn't on the original document. So we can, during this meeting, we can accept additional changes that might not be on the document that was posted. This isn't a public hearing.
Okay.
So it's just our changes, so.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's on the up and up.
Nope, yep, it's,
But if I didn't save my changes, we might not be reviewing my changes.
But it is a public hearing.
this is not a public hearing.
Yes, it is.
It is identified.
Oh, it is?
as
It's
on
not
the
a
agenda.
discussion item.
But the same thing applies. If you wanted to change anything, reject any of my changes, add new changes, you could do it here. The public is invited to give comments.
But they're invited to give comments on the changes that have been posted, and if they don't know if there's any additional changes that have been posted, I'm not sure if that's giving them enough time to make.
If I was showing these, I think you'd see some of them are mostly grammatical, spacing, minor stuff, so I don't know the public care, but you can still make changes.
Pardon me, are we approving this
So,
with finality, or are we just sending it to city council for final approval?
so as part of the process for a zoning ordinance
Actually,
change-
before you say that, Chair Foster just entered the meeting at 6:43 PM, and I will pass the chair on to Chair Foster.
Thank you, Vice Chair Showalter, and I apologize for my tardiness, but great job, and thank you for taking over. I was able to listen on the way in here, so I just want to say, for a zoning ordinance amendment, we'll have the two public hearings. This will be our first at the Public Planning Commission, where we do have the ability to make non-substantive changes to what was posted in, and previous to the meeting, per our discussion and per our recommended changes. The city council will hear it on the second reading. We'll have I do believe we have a planning commission, or a public hearing at that meeting as well, where similarly, the city council then also has the ability to make edits to the recommendations that we sent to them. If they're non-substantive. If they are substantive, then they would potentially have to send it back.
Yeah.
And substantive being, obviously, all things in a legal document could potentially be substantive, but with some, grace in terms of what was already posted and what we made edit.
Okay, I found the version, now I just gotta get it to the lectern.
Well, thanks, Roger, for stalling for me to get here. Thanks.
Didn't do it on purpose, but it worked out. Problem is, it's on OneDrive. Can we just take a break and have IT? We motion for just a couple-minute break.
Make a motion to have a 5-minute recess or break or whatever.
Second?
I'm assuming we're back up.
Wait till 6:50.
Did he leave or just stepped out? Oh, okay. Okay. Is it coming back?
Greg, you want a little bigger?
Please.
Going, keep.
If it fills the screen, it's easier for people to read off. Well, not
Too much?
a little, yeah.
Perfect.
Try there.
All right, well, it's 6:50 and we're ready to return.
So I apologize for that technical difficulty. Before I continue, I do want to introduce Melissa, who's our new planner.
Oh, hello.
Welcome.
So Melissa will come up at the end and introduce herself and talk about where she came from and a little bit of history. But if you see someone sitting there, just want to explain that. So going through the second clean version, there are no changes until I think page 6. We're going to have to correct the numbers because they adjusted, but that's okay. And then no changes through here. Changes right here. So just to be consistent, residential district to encourage a wider mix of dwellings versus the R1, 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit, and ADs. I call them ADs to be consistent. We can change it to ADUs if people want, as well as denser residential typologies of multiple dwellings, including loft, residential terrace, neighborhood row house, and corridor row house. Because in our form-based, we have those specific names. Live-work dwellings are allowed by special land use approval. And all other uses permitted in the R1 district. So very basic change. I'm going to go through these. If anybody has any questions, tell me to go back. And no changes in the use chart. This might be because we're zooming in or something. We'll fix pulling that down. We'll fix having a title at the top of each of these so you can see the uses, just grammatical.
And we are, I'm sorry to interject, but we are using PDF currently, but this will be eventually put into Municode, correct?
Correct. This is a Word document.
Correct.
That's
Well,
why it's
yes.
all, yeah. But then it'll be a PDF on the website, and then it'll be in Municode.
When you're mentioning the accessory dwelling unit being called ADs instead, can you make sure that you adjust the definition on page 176 to also say accessory dwelling unit AD? It still says ADU on that.
On this version, though? Actually, I didn't do a word search, so it might in the version you're looking at. Are you looking at the previous one?
Okay, yeah, just make sure that the definition and the acronyms are consistent.
Yeah, I'll do one last family search, single, because single was, it was single unit, 2 unit, so I'll do one last search. The Woodward Heights overlay, if you look at your current version, it said same as underlying, same as underlying. There were a couple dashes. It said 50 feet height. I just changed it all to the same as underlying, which I think is all I-1, right, along Woodward Heights south side and Hilton west side. It just created more columns, so it's just simpler to say same as underlying. I don't know why this says.
Through the chair. Roger, I had a question about, we removed 3 feet away from,
That, well, that'll be in the other version.
okay,
We're just going to go through these simple,
Okay.
clear up ones, see if anybody has any issues. This one, there was a item C here, which is in the other one. I crossed it out here. If you're good with it in the other version, then I'll renumber these or re-letter these and correct up here. So this, Ds would go to Cs, and I'll readjust that.
Or use reserved like I think you did in other instances.
I did in the first version, and then I'm like, if I'm going to clean it up, I might as well just
Yeah,
clean it
okay,
up.
good point.
So-
A quick question on that one. Was the idea of keeping the C as reserved was because the D and E comments are the same across the tables, right?
It was just because I didn't want to go through the table and redo all the Ds to Cs and Es to Ds.
Okay, so it's not like by removing the C, we are making this table, like, you see what I'm saying? Like if the comments A, B, D, and E are the same across all the tables, it may be
Oh,
easy.
no.
They're not the same, it's
No.
just, okay.
No, C was something different. So I said, I'll just reserve it so I don't have to play around with it. And then I'm thinking if we're going to delete it, let's move the letters.
Right, but what I'm saying is like, so if there's table 1 has A through E, table 2 has the same comments, A, B, D, and E, but just not C, does it make it more confusing to change the lettering in the tables for someone reading it if the E is the same as the D in the previous table?
We'll go look. I don't think there's anything like that. I think C was the one I recommended we remove. So I just reserved it so I didn't have to mess around with the table and change. I don't think it's related to anything else to be consistent. This is probably one of the bigger changes, and it's very weird. We currently have a definition for double frontage lots. Double frontage lots are very small. They're like Troy Street, west of Woodward, right? Rosie's, Soho, all those businesses. And really, I think mostly East Troy, Credit Union, City Hall, Library. So in this, we were originally saying both are front streeted frontages, which then requires the front street setback, right? So it complicates it. Like say you have a front setback of 10 feet, right? It's 10 feet. It has to be 10 feet setback from both north and south side. And people need some relief for dumpsters or patio area on their backside. So my recommendation is just get rid of the double frontage lot, which means lots. A lot has one front yard, which is customarily designated with the street address. This is also known as the principal frontage for building design purposes. A lot also has one rear, which is directly opposite, and the 2 remaining yards are side yards. It just keeps it simpler for 99% of properties in the city, but it's up to the commission.
Yeah, I actually disagree with this. I think we've used that quite a bit. The corner lots and the double frontage lots. I think we come across corner lots quite often. I think it has been sometimes confusing because there are differences. I can think of like maybe Livernois or something like that as an example where on Livernois you have a large, Livernois or Pinecrest or, like where you have a large, I think I'm thinking more of like Pinecrest. We have a really large front setback and then on some of those side setbacks. So I guess, I know we have had, it is complicated, but I think there are instances where it's also, it should be in play where this is a frontage to the street and when we should treat it as such. So generally, I think we found that it was kind of important to have it in previous years. But I would like to hear, I don't know, what everyone else. I don't know if we've really had to deal with that, especially at the commission level. I think this, takes place on residential quite often, well, especially the corner lots. Double frontage, we also don't have a lot of development on those properties, so we haven't had to deal with that too much, not in recent years. But.
So the corner lots, I don't think really have a difference in the code. So the setback, I think it used to be 5 feet for your side, and if you were a corner lot, it's 6 feet. We went to 5 feet for both sides. So when you have a corner lot, I don't think there's any difference now on it being a corner lot versus a side. Does that make sense? Like, they're not treated at the corner. So take Rosie's for example. The Allen Street, I don't think there's anything in the code that treats that differently, Allen Street versus their east side. Setback, height.
Right, but the front setback would be different than the side setback.
Correct. The front setback would apply. Now, here's the weird part. I think in the building design, it says your principal one gets the design. So the design of the building, the important piece in the front versus percentage of materials, whatever, use Rosie's, would be 9 Mile. We would not apply it to the Troy side. So that only applies to one of them. But the weird part is when you have buildings, if you look at Troy Street, there's usually a gap to the back of the building, 20 feet. If one of those buildings tore down, you would make them build to the average of the front and the average of the back, and if they don't get any area for patio, there's no flexibility to it. So it's hard when you're applying this to like each property and trying to think through. Where if it's a double frontage, I need to treat both sides
Well,
as a street frontage.
through the chair, in those instances, I mean, if a building, between Allen and Woodward, were to be replaced, you could also just do it specially, we could say, well, in this circumstances, if you didn't want to build all the way out to the corner, or up to the 0 lot line in the back, you wouldn't have to. My concern is that they'd be allowed to. And then you have this one building that sticks out all the way to the sidewalk, which kind of interrupts what the view is today, where you have that open space.
Well, you could only allow them to do that if they did a PUD or a variance.
Well, I think if we want to maintain that setback specifically on Troy, I guess what I'm also concerned about is if we treat it as a rear yard rather than a front yard, we just put in a lot of investment on Troy Street through the city in hopes that that is treated as more of a main street frontage versus an alleyway. And so I think if we just want that setback, we can write in that Troy Street has a different setback on that north side. Like, there's a way that we can treat it for that specific instance, but that doesn't mean that we're treating it as a rear yard. Because I think that it's not.
Sure, I would ask, what's the difference? So if we call it a double frontage, we're saying both are front streets, then you have to meet the setbacks. If we're saying, no, we want to keep the language of double frontage, but on Troy Street, you get a different setback, it is like removing the double frontage. Because the only
But
double,
we have different, setback's not the only standard that we are reviewing when it's a front versus a rear. Like you just said, we have different design standards for a front yard.
Through the chair, I wonder if we should just note this to be pulled out of this first packet
Yeah.
for discussion in the second, so that Roger can get through this,
we can. In the end, if the feeling is we don't want to do it, it's okay.
Yeah, I think this is a bigger deal that we were not necessarily prepared for to discuss tonight. So I agree with Michelle.
Through the chair, the only other issue that I would have would be the corner lots, in which we do allow some leeway in what can be allowed on the side of the house, like air conditioners on corner lots are allowed in certain circumstances on the side of the house as opposed to the back of the house.
I don't think so. I think you make a good point. I think it says you cannot install them on your side yard.
Right.
I mean, I guess what you're saying is you consider the other side a corner and that's not a side, but we probably would consider, I'm thinking of the building part, would consider both as sides. They wouldn't probably differentiate. But it's an interesting, I think, how Scott would do it. You're saying if we get rid of corner, then both are just as sides. You can't put it in the side, and now it affects those people.
I mean, I believe you can do side yard as long as they're screening.
Yeah.
At the CE director's determination that it's not an impact to the neighbor next door and you're going to screen it, then yes, you can. These really look like changes, they're really not. I just clarified because we just said for 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit, the rear yard is 20 feet, but in the R2 district, you can actually have a multiple unit too. Right, so I just clarified that for this district. Because it's different. These numbers were wrong. So in the use chart, it said 30, and I think maybe you mentioned it, Michelle. And then here it said 25. So I just went with the the dimensional standard. So it was 30 here, and again, clarified, and multiple units in the R2 residential district.
I'm sorry, could you go back? Was it trying to say that for 1 unit, 2 unit, and 3 unit, it's 25, and then for multi-unit, it's 35?
Correct. For 2-unit, 3-unit, and 4-unit, and multiple units in the R2, it's actually 35. So what we wanted to do in building is, instead of putting the higher number over here, right, and then we see 35, and we approve a single-family home in the R1 at 35, and it really should have been 30, we put the more restrictive in there, so 30 is the more restrictive, but then we spell out, here's why. And so let me go up here. So
Thank you. No, that's
no.
more, it's the 1 unit that's differentiated.
Maximum height, so 30 feet if it's a 1 unit on the R1, and 2 to 4 is 35.
Thank you.
So both, if you're a 1 unit, you get 30, asterisk. If you're a 2 or 4, or 2 or 4 multiple units, I'm sorry, that could probably be clarified a little bit more too, because,
No, that was helpful to see. And it's basically a density bonus, so if you want to put multiple units on a lot, you get a height incentive.
so there's two different ideas. For 2 unit, 3 unit, and 4 unit, in the R1 and 2, you can be 35, and multiple units in the R2. So it's, multiple units is tied just to the R2 because you can't do multiple units in the R1.
Okay.
Fix this. And then, I hope I did
Ray,
this.
can you go back for a second?
Yeah.
Did it say minimum 30 feet? I thought it was maximum.
Up more?
That's rear yards, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. I thought we were looking at height.
Two different ones. So for the rear yard, it's a minimum, and for the height, it's a maximum, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Then here, I think we had 20 feet before, and I think that was the higher number. Maximum in the MXD1 is 0 feet, 20 feet for multiple units / commercial in the MXD1. So 0 is the maximum front yard setback.
Minimum mean.
Let me scroll down more. There we go. When adjacent to an R1 or R2 residence, a minimum side yard setback of 5 feet is required. And I have to think about all this stuff. Maximum,
Be the opposite, that the minimum is 0 and
0, let's go up. That was MXD1?
Mm-hmm.
$15D, $15D, $15D. Minimum side yard setback. 0E. Front yard minimum maximum. Oh, there we go. It's 15D, which says an average. Maximum is 20. So then, yes, that should be,
In our previous ordinance, didn't we have a shorter minimum?
maybe. Let me zoom through these. These are just going to take from the use chart, but there's other stuff in the use chart that I don't think we agreed with, so it might alleviate all these.
So are we looking right now at the version 2 red marks?
Version 2. These are ones that you don't see.
Do we want to table this until we have time to actually look at?
But he said, yeah, we're going to table these and then just keep scrolling through the easy ones.
Probably in the next one.
Yeah.
These pages I didn't do. I didn't have time today, but it matched the same exact thing. We would go to the lower number so we don't make a mistake, and we clarify it because we made the dimensional chart.
So you're just clarifying on what was already approved in the dimensional chart, for the most part.
Unless
for
you
on this.
change something on the version you have, then that'll change. So this was all just, I will quadruple check it. I didn't review any of these pages because after the second or third one, I was getting confused. Vacant and abandoned businesses, clarifying no outdoor storage, including materials, equipment, recreational vehicles, boats, or similar is allowed. So a vacant and abandoned building or business, when you close after 90 days, vehicle parking and outdoor storage are prohibited. I guess I probably could combine that with C. Within 30 days, all non-conforming signage removed. And this clarifies a little bit more and stuff.
It's a bit confusing. That says no outdoor storage, but at the end it says is allowed.
No outdoor storage is allowed.
Yeah, but it would
Oh,
be
no
like
outdoor
outdoor storage
structure.
is not allowed would be a better.
No outdoor storage is not allowed?
Outdoor storage is not allowed.
It's,
Saying nothing is allowed, if you don't see the nothing, it's just is allowed.
Yeah, I would just get rid of is allowed or similar, yeah.
it's technically grammatically correct, but it is confusing because of the distance with the listing of the the things that you cannot have, so.
If you're good with
I would
those,
just get rid of is allowed
just
and just have it boats or similar.
Yeah, just outdoor
Or no, or
storage
no,
is prohibited.
or no, yeah, outdoor storage prohibited, or no outdoor storage is allowed, including yada yada.
why don't I combine A and C and say something like vehicle parking and storage and outdoor storage, including materials, equipment, boats or similar, except as necessary for construction in connection with the building permit or for maintenance of the site is allowed,
Is,
or change language.
Because of it.
Well, we do get a lot, I'm noticing as I drive around, boats and other things. So the first piece just says vehicle parking and outdoor storage.
So yes, so just combine them and to emphasize.
I think just as cover, maybe we could include a couple in there, but I can combine A and C if everyone's
I
good.
think it should
yeah,
be
it'd
combined.
be like vehicular parking and outdoor storage, including materials, equipment, recreational vehicles, et cetera, except as necessary.
I have a point of clarification. What qualifies as a vacant or abandoned business?
Right.
It says 9
There's a-
days or more not.
There's a definition, I believe.
Is it registered with the city as a business and then it closes?
No, so we actually just created a vacant structure program, which complements this. But that's just a general catch-all, that if you're a vacant and abandoned building, that you haven't been there more than 90 days, you can't have outdoor storage.
I'm just wondering if it's building or property where there was a business.
Well,
I'm just thinking, going back to our food truck conversation,
If it's an outdoor storage.
if it's a vacant lot that there was a business on,
no, that's an outdoor store.
I don't want to muddy it.
I think that's covered in outdoor storage, which is a
Just
different.
what was going through my head.
All right, architectural features, I think in your version, it may project 23 feet from the building. Don't want 23 feet. I accidentally had the 3, I meant to scratch it out, so it's 2 feet. There's a spacing here. This I just skipped over. Building grades, newly constructed parking lots, buildings, and projects undergoing sufficient alteration as determined by this engineer must provide stormwater detention. That's in a separate section. All that's already covered. So we can scroll down and see that.
So should you reference that section?
No, because this is just related to grades. There's a whole stormwater section. Right?
Scroll up, I want to read what's,
The 305, the building grades?
yeah, building grade, so.
Essential services, I don't know why this is here. Essential services are permitted as authorized under the franchise in effect with the city, subject to the regulations. However, buildings associated with an essential service are subject to special land use. All that is covered in the use chart. So I don't know why we've broken it out. It says essential services, no building, essential services, building. All the buildings require special land use. These end up getting renumbered if we remove one of the items above. Fencing, we don't allow any fencing in the rear yard in the CBD. We've had issues where people do want to demarcate the space a little bit. We don't want 6-foot fencing. So I propose that it be 4-foot fencing. There is this also decorative fencing in there that automatically allows all fencing 36 inches. So,
Now, if you look
Yeah.
on Troy Street,
Huh?
you look on Troy Street, all of that fencing, it was actually installed by the city.
Also technically a front yard
Yeah.
currently.
Yes, this would apply in that particular case if we get rid of
If we-
the
yeah.
front. If we don't, then it becomes a little bit mute because it's a front yard. We have this problem, the parking lots, I guess, are not regulated by the International Property Maintenance Code. So I have language in here, all parking lots shall be in good condition, characterized by a smooth, durable, and well-maintained surface. No more than 20% of the parking lot area shall have potholes or surface integrity issues. No more than 20% of the underlying base and/or subbase should be structurally unsound. Parking lots shall have visible striping and parking stall, pedestrian crosswalks, and similar. So I guess that is not regulated by the International Property Maintenance Code, which did not know.
Well, if that gets passed, someone needs to have a conversation with 7-Eleven down at Hilton and Pine Mile.
Yes, we do.
We're not specifically picketing on any businesses, but there are lots of businesses that I've told code enforcement, like, this is just a pothole nightmare, and I've been told, well, that's not in the property maintenance code, you can't do anything.
I would make it say, I would make it say structurally unsound instead of structural unsound.
Structurally unsound.
Also, how do we propose to assess the underlying base and subbase from a,
Well, I think if the top base is if broken, right, the base on the bottom potentially is bad.
right, I mean, I understand how asphalt works, but like, if we're basing that on
Just visually, or?
20% of the area having potholes or surface integrity, like if the wearing course of the asphalt, like the top inch or two is gone, and then like the base course also is gone, like that still is covered by the potholes, so I would have a hard time being like, how.
So you don't need
Have to
both?
do like, you'd have to do like density testing to see, like if there's already a pothole there, like you can't have a known base or sub-base issue without seeing a pothole or a crack.
I don't disagree. What I did is went to Google and typed what is the definition of and that came up as a measurement. I agree, it's kind of,
Yeah,
the surface is what you care about.
Just if the surface is intact, but the sub-base is not, the only way you'd know that is by doing like density testing.
So do we only need the first sentence?
I'm fine with that. As I typed it out, I thought, I'm probably gonna see it on the surface already.
No.
So I'll delete that.
Which section is this? What's
309.
General maintenance.
general maintenance? We
Lighting.
need to, do we allow for, just in terms of like sustainability and, do we have like different surfaces that are allowed for parking lots that potentially don't meet that definition? That's my only question. And I don't know what we've talked about in terms of like using
Like a permeable, yeah.
permeable
Permeable
surfaces.
surfaces on private property.
Yeah, would that technically be characterized as smooth, durable, and well-maintained it should be?
Probably,
Church by Savvy, that's a dirt lot there, so.
probably not. So there's a technicality in that. It could say all parking lots shall be in good condition, blah, 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 unless otherwise approved by the city or something.
And it doesn't necessarily indicate as written that it's talking about pavements, it's just, if it's.
Smooth and
if it's
durable.
intact and it's
Right.
smooth and it's durable.
Yeah, I just don't know if a permeable would necessarily always be smooth.
Well, I mean,
That's what I'm asking, I don't know.
I mean, if you're driving over a permeable parking lot and it feels like you're driving on the surface of the moon, I'd still kind of want that to be fixed.
I mean, this could say all hard surface parking lots shall be kept in good condition. Doesn't address that.
Well, I think we want, like, if it is permeable, we want it to be in good condition as well. I just don't want us to prevent a case where somebody is trying to create a more, environmentally friendly surface and that it doesn't meet this. So I just wanted to bring that up, so we're not painting somebody in a corner if they have to have asphalt and whatnot.
I think staff would be, we would know when we see it. And so it's a permeable driveway. It's not going to be hard surface.
Something, you just need something to point at when you're citing someone.
Well, and there would probably be more requirements for a permeable parking lot because on the east side, you have clay. I mean, the whole idea is that the parking lot, the rainwater is draining through the parking lot. You can't put a permeable
Well, if you,
parking on, if it
well,
went
if
into
it
a.
doesn't drain, it would just be like a regular parking lot, right?
Well,
Can we just add something like, this may include permeable surfaces or something like that?
309. This may include permeable.
Allowed permeable surfaces or something. I don't even know what we do allow or not allow in the rest of the ordinance. I just want to make sure, especially if people are looking at this, that they don't feel like they're backed into a corner.
Beyond pavement.
Yeah.
So,
I think just as it's saying, as just for parking lots, and it doesn't specify that it's a paved parking lot, then it does
already by
provide
definition, covers
Yeah.
permeable.
I'll take a look. I'll run it by the city attorney. We'll get something. I put in here that the city encourages, I don't know how everybody feels, warm lighting tones. Lately, everybody's going to these, 8,000 K LED lights that are blinding me. So it doesn't require it, but it says we encourage the warmer tones. I don't know how people feel about that.
What- So if you encourage warm lighting tones not to exceed 3,000, you're no longer just encouraging them.
Yeah. Oh, not to exceed. It's,
Oh, because it's warm. The city encourages warm lighting tones, 3,000 K or less.
that, you can say, oh, yeah,
Warmer,
something like that.
the lower the kelvins, the warmer it gets. But, I mean,
Just the language of not to.
Yeah,
3,000 or less would work.
3,000 or less.
is 3,000 or less the right
It's
amount?
just an encouragement.
Well, I'm just wondering, because 3,000 is pretty darn warm.
I wonder if there's any lighting design guidelines.
Can you look into that number, the 3,000? It might be 3,500, it might be.
Would that be sensor-based too?
It doesn't, warmth doesn't really, isn't censored, it really doesn't affect warmth. It's just, when you look at a lot, it's like, does it look like red light or like blue light?
Yeah, so 6,000 is kind of the differentiator.
And is this for interior or exterior?
Yeah, because the first item 1 says interior, but item 3 says exterior. So are we encouraging it for both or just the exterior? Like,
We don't really have jurisdiction of internal unless it is exceeding the building.
There's something in the lighting, or there was, that said something about like,
But something that you can see through the windows.
yeah, that you're blinding people. So here's
Gotcha.
whoop. Best one. I mean, this is 3,000, right? Still got this tone. Measurement can be anywhere.
Which one's 3,000?
3,000's right here.
How many from the left?
Third.
Third
It's in
one.
ones, 1 to 10.
Oh, we can't see your cursor on these, but if you look behind you, you can see his cursor.
There's 3,000. 4,000, I mean, I'm still okay with 4,000. It's when you're starting to get into these that just becomes
oh yeah,
obnoxious.
Like 4,500 or something, or like,
I like 3,000.
yeah, I don't mind it.
We're only encouraging.
Yeah, right, we're
It's
encouraging.
just when I do staff reports, I can point to it and say the city encourages this.
Yeah.
I already had it happen once on Hilton with the development, and they already changed it. So some will say no, and I don't know that we should.
What about the
Like the-
accounting place on Saratoga and Woodward where you can perform surgery at 3 a.m.?
It's a separate lighting issue. That's legal.
So I would-
actually legal
I would
non-conforming.
think 3,500 would be the number I would look for.
There's studies also about like safety and of the ability to see faces in certain types of light. And one of the reasons why we have lighting in parking lots is for safety. So if there is if anyone knows of any, correlation between the color and the safety, I think that'd be helpful. But I think what you were pointing to is kind of like daylight white. And so I think that would be well within the measure of what we're looking for in
Yeah,
terms
so
of safety.
We have a couple issues. The liquor beer store next to the 7-Eleven on 9 Mile, they have their lights just out a little bit, and they have a bunch of them. The Get and Go, the Shell gas station, these businesses believe like the brighter I make it, the better it's going to be. But, you're blinded under there and someone approaches you from some feet away, you cannot really
It's actually less safe, yes. Yeah.
Especially in that alleyway going towards that 7-Eleven. You don't know who's in between there.
Do we have a temperature? Would you want to pick a number?
We like the encouragement. Everyone okay with 3,000 or 4? If you say less than
We got to give them a range.
35,
Candle, isn't it candle power?
That's different.
that's-
That is
that's
required by
intensity.
code.
It's intensity?
and yeah, maybe
This is the color of the light that's cast.
maybe we should do a range so it's not too low, because if you say less than, then we get some red light districts going on.
I mean, but some of this is probably based off the fact that old lights used to be old sodium halide lights. And those sodium halide lights had a really low color rendering index, and you couldn't tell if something was a red car or a black car when looking at
Yellow,
it.
pink.
So there's a lot more to public lighting than just color temperature.
There's a safety issue.
Yeah.
The note, like all of you have mentioned, to check the safety
So,
plans before making
and I think we should do it a little bit more rigorously than what I just did, but Google says between 5,000 and 6,500 K, a cool white light for outdoor safety lighting, that is the generally recommended scope. So I think, yeah, just maybe having some sort of range, and especially, this is an encouragement, this is a requirement, but I think it's important to note that we do want that a little bit warmer, as long as it's safe.
I just
We don't
put-
have to,
Say,
we don't have to put a measure, we can just say we encourage warmer light tones.
we could say like 3,000 to 6,000.
I just put a question into the person who wrote the IEC standards.
Yes.
I'll get back with you.
Thank you, yeah, if you could do that. I also don't mind taking a better look. I've written, lighting,
I think it
ordinances
also
in the
depends on
past.
application, because if you're gonna do this on a wall that faces out, anyone that is facing the opposite direction of the light is gonna be completely in darkness. You're never gonna see that person's face with all that light behind you. But if you're in a parking lot where it's an open space, it's gonna be a different situation.
Well, I think elsewhere, we talk about the intensity of the light separately, so.
And when you do light colors, I mean, there's a lot of things that you use to decide on what color your lights want to be, what material we're casting it on, what color you're casting it on, and I think, I don't know.
Yeah, but the city also is promoting, the, what do they call it?
Ambiance.
The dark skies,
Oh, that's what-
protection of, shielding of light,
Is that what I was saying?
and some of these are just giving off such immense brightness.
So this is going to come up in the other one, we don't have to spend too much time. This is the, form-based code, building materials, general architectural standards, and building type standards. I think Chair Foster had part of this, we'll talk. If we decide to do that, this is really hard when you go into 405, and it talks about these building designs, right? Because we really didn't do that many. Retail, theater, financial institution, hotel, there's 7 of them, 8 of them. But there's a million uses that are unique, like gas stations. We don't have a form-based code for that. And
We didn't want something because we wanted it to be,
Isn't that only in the CBD district, too?
I think the point of the form-based code too is that we're not regulating by use, is that what, by the form that we want. And so therefore, this is the forming massing that we are looking for. But so what was your point in terms of,
so I exempted people from the building design if they were, it'll be in the next section, we can bring this forward, is the reuse of an existing building. Because in the current one, I think it says if you add an addition, it needs to meet the code. It's going to be very hard to do an addition and make it be a different form-based. Or is a use which a building type standard does not exist. So if it's a gas station, I don't know how I'm going to apply the theater, or the retail kind of applies, but then you have the canopy.
so what was the intention when McKenna created this for those specific uses that were called out that didn't have a form associated with them?
I don't know. I don't know where all the form-based, I know we wanted to go that direction, but the use chart allows all these uses. So the use chart says you can do it, and then I got to put them in a,
You don't know how to apply the code based on those uses that don't have a correlated form. Okay.
yeah, they only did 7 or 8 of them, so, and I don't think we want to do 100 of them. So, but when we go to the other one, you'll see those changes, and I think Chair Foster will have comments. I changed this, all new construction and work that involves the expansion of the building must also meet the requirements of the building types. You'll see it in the other one when we talk about it, but I just said all new construction. All new construction is really easy to apply one of these design standards to.
It's, when I look at, I don't know, when I see new construction, and when I hear new construction, I think of a new building, and when I hear addition, I think of an addition to an existing building, just based off of the way that other codes read. The other codes break it off. New construction is read one way, additions are read another way, and so by reading all new construction, also could mean, so are we saying that we don't want additions to follow these guidelines, or do we want additions to follow that?
That'll be up to you. For me, if it's new construction, meaning a new building, then it's easy to put them into a design standard. If somebody wants to do a little bit of an addition, to a retail building, and it's old school, it's going to be hard, like the 7-Eleven, if they want to add to it or something, hard because it's an addition to make it match this new building form. But I think it's we can hold that to where the other comments are going to come from, because you may decide like, no, we want to keep it all this way. I don't think there's much other changes. Scroll, it was page 71 that I stopped at. I got the word, this one's really a terrace. So that changes. I don't think there's anything. Yep, I stopped at 5. So what I have here is clarifying ADs in the document, combining A and C in 3.01, which is the parking outdoor storage, structurally versus structural in the word, removing the underbase of the parking lot requirement, just the surface, including language for the parking lots, permeable approved surfaces does not apply. And then we're waiting on any lighting direction.
Thank you.
We generally go with that.
Yeah, and then we're tabling a couple of things,
Yep.
all the rest of it. Okay.
All right, so now if I go into, you want to review the red line? And we could probably do a PDF, might be easier. That good? Okay. All right. Numbers might have adjusted based on where it's going to go, but we'll clean all that up. All right. Any use not expressly permitted within it said this code, I made it specific within the schedule of permitted uses, that's a technical term, is prohibited. And then when determining an accessory use, we added intensity of use or other similar metrics. I don't know why we said years of operation, what that has anything to do with anything on accessory use. So this is someone has a main use, they have a smaller accessory use.
Oh, maybe because if you have, say, a restaurant and 1 year they want to do retail, but it's just 1 year, and that's an accessory, but maybe it was COVID, and so they couldn't do the restaurant, and so then they opened up this big retail store, but then the next year, then it went back to a restaurant. It seems weird. I don't know. But like, I don't know if that's a good example, but is that what may potentially be an accessory use with a year of operation?
Nothing's more permanent than temporary. Like, they would do it, then stopping them would be hard down the line because it works so well and they want to continue to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like that. I do have a question about the first sentence that I would like you to ask our city attorney. Because I know that it is illegal to prohibit uses outright from an ordinance. So I just want to make sure that we're not, and I think that if we've already had this in, that's okay, but just to reiterate, since we are making some changes, I just wanted to make sure that that language isn't going to get us in trouble.
Yeah, Dan did a great job actually reviewing every single page of this.
Okay.
Because Kyle and I spent hours going
And we haven't really changed, like, the meaning of that. Okay, so we should be fine then.
The technical term of schedule of permitted uses, and then
Gives
Maybe
an
a little
exception in the same sentence, too.
Huh?
There's an exception in the same sentence, so it says
right.
prohibited unless.
That's
So
right.
there's
Okay,
already-
that's why I didn't make a comment the first time around. All right, thank you.
Point of information, I got an update from the IEC. 2,700 to 3,000 Kelvin is what the dark sky recommendation levels are.
To 3,000, you said?
Yep.
So maybe
We
just
want
leave,
things to be dark sky?
maybe just leave the 3,000.
So
Through the
3,000.
chair, is there a lower limit that police require for security cameras?
All right, well, we're going to do more research on that. And I think that's a good question, Commissioner Brazen.
All right. This one was just out of order. It said 2010, then 2, then 8. Right? I don't know why. Then 6. 2002, 10,008, 2010, 8, 2, and 6. So I'd like to renumber these so they go in order from newest to oldest. This is just cleaning up language. We had in, as a definition, or in multiple places, it's called a detached single unit. I don't know why a single unit is detached. It's just a single unit, I'm not really sure. So we just use the terms consistently to encourage a mix of dwellings, single units, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, and accessory dwelling units. We'll do a word search. Get caught in the next one.
For the clarification also, should that be a 1 unit instead of a single unit?
Oh, you're right. You know, you're
Good catch, Ryan.
single. I'll do a word search for single.
I was just about to say, I also checked it after Roger, so clearly not well enough.
So just little stuff. Didn't have the word "and" to promote development. Well, correct this. Mixed use. I guess it maybe didn't cross off mix. Specialized industrial operations requiring access by street or railroad. None of the railroad people can access. It's a terminal. So the railroad does not allow any access to it. So I just removed railroad. Change all these: 1 unit, 2 unit dwelling, 3 unit dwelling, 4 unit dwelling, multiple dwelling, mixed use dwelling, live work dwelling, accessory dwelling.
Thank you for that cleanup. It was confusing how it was written previously.
Yeah. I didn't like the term family. I think we talked about that
We had
before.
talked about that.
So it's adult foster care. We define it as small, medium, or large. And then the definition changed to,
I think we use the state definitions for those, but I don't think it's any issue for us to change it locally. That's just probably where that came from.
we're good, you think?
I don't see why we're still going to be able to relate it. It's mostly based on person, and so I think it's fine.
Mobile vendor, we left in there, it was permitted with an asterisk, but then we have no section on that yet. So I just removed that line. Then, okay, here we
And
go.
because we'll add it back in once we have those.
If we decide to move forward, then we'll just add it back in. So the left column is correcting the language. This column right here, where it says front yard minimum, if you're an R1 in a 1 unit, your setback minimum is 15 feet, except D is the averaging. You're going to average 5 people each side, get rid of the highest and lowest, and you're that. So if you're a 1 unit, we want you to be an average. If you're 2 to 4 units, we want you to be an average. If you're in the R2, you're a 1 unit average. And then over here, it's not an average, it's a flat 15. So I don't know why, if you're 5 or more or multiple, we want you to be 15 when we allow everyone else to be a little bit closer. I think it's just that D didn't,
Especially when there's not a height difference from the 2 to 4. It doesn't really make sense. I think the only reason it would potentially make sense that you want to make sure to have that is that you wouldn't want to feel like a building is looming over you potentially. But it's the same height limit as the 2 to 4, so I don't think that is the case. And also, it's a 35-foot height limit. It's not that tall.
I didn't think about the height. And the next one, I have the same thing, but that is a taller building.
So that might be the case there, and so we can discuss that, but I think there are certainly instances in the city where we have a narrower front yard setback for buildings of a similar height, but there's really maybe not that many places.
So do we want to talk about that? Is there, MXD1, your multiple units, 5 or more, commercial, you can be 45 feet in height. Should it match the average of your neighbors, or should it just be a straight 15?
In MXD1.
MXD1, higher density.
And MXD1 is what, like Hilton, Livernois?
Livernois, Hilton, Marshall, maybe? West?
Marshall is actually what I was thinking when I said Hilton, but thank you. Is Hilton 1 or 2?
Scroll back up a few pages.
Sorry, Roger.
Hilton is, we're looking at light pink. So you got Marshall, Livernois,
South Hilton,
Just Hilton is
South
MXD1.
Livernois,
South Hilton,
East West Marshall, like you said.
Woodward Heights, and
yep, a little bit up here.
Iron Ridge, yeah.
so it's the more of the neighborhood feel, where you do have those existing buildings. I think it makes sense to be flexible on the front yard setback with the average within 5 feet. Anyone opposed to the change? And then for MXD2, we had previously had a minimum of 0 foot and a maximum of 10, and then we're proposing the same 15.
Yeah, so MXD2, if you're 2 to 4 units, you can average, but if you're 5 or more or commercial, you have to be 0. So I didn't know, why would you now be the opposite? We want you to be there. So I had it match. Here's my general take on it. We've made this complicated by the type of density it is and all these things. The more we have in here, the more there's a mistake.
Or just variability as well. And so I would think that we would want a consistent street wall, particularly on MXD2, when it's more of a commercial wall, where you would want that consistency. In area, I mean, it's similar in any of these areas, right? We're trying to provide for the ability to have housing and commercial. It's a mixed-use area. Typically in a commercial area, you want some of that consistency, and but as well as in our residential area. So it makes sense, I think, to have that consistency. I think in MXD2, which we just saw is more so like North Hilton. Is there other areas? Woodward? Oh, along Woodward, outside of the CBD. So particularly on Woodward, I think that's probably why we have that 0 foot, because it's consistent with the CBD, but having a little bit of flexibility so that you can have a setback. So I think that does make sense. But again, where we're differentiating, if you have a 2 or 4 unit, again, I think it's probably better to have consistency. I don't see why you would necessarily have up to a 20-foot setback along Woodward if you had a 4-unit residential mixed-use building.
I guess, did we, based on the second column in MXD2, did we add that 5+ unit slash 5+ units, multiple unit? Like, was it previously just commercial?
No, it was, it said 5+, the language we used before was 5+ units / commercial.
I see.
So that was crossed out, and I just put multiple units, because that's our definition.
Would it make sense to do 0 with the D then, to allow it up to 0? I think, is that similar to?
Well, it does. So it's 15 feet is your setback. D, you average, and so if we look down at D,
So I'm confused because as a 2 to 4, can it also be mixed where you have a commercial unit? Like, it almost seems like we're cutting it out where you couldn't have a 4-unit mixed-use development, which I think you should be able to. So some of that nomenclature is a little bit confusing, because it should all be mixed in this.
it should all be mixed?
Well, it's a mixed use So I would think that we're allowing, even if it's a 4-unit building. So like I'm thinking of on South Hilton, where we have those townhomes. If those were like a 4-unit townhome with a front commercial unit, like that would be allowable. If you have 2 to 4 units, I don't think that negates the possibility of having commercial per our design of the mixed use.
Is this slash commercial a,
Only commercial?
right, like if it's
Gotcha.
only commercial and not also including residential, then you have to follow.
Is there a need to differentiate these at all? Shouldn't it just be?
I don't know, I got really started getting confused
I
with all
know.
of it.
I don't know why we have it separate.
Should be like MXD2 with residential, without residential, and does that matter?
Or like,
Same
yeah, I
point.
just think it should all be the same. I mean, I don't know.
Personally, on an application, if it was R1, R2, MXD, it would make it so much easier.
Well, like, so here's another example, I guess. So if I'm thinking of like Pleasant Ridge North on Woodward, they have those townhomes that are set further back than the commercial units to either side. I guess maybe that's kind of what this is kind of like designing for, having a little bit further setback if it is just a residential unit.
Yeah.
Is that, should we?
So for example, when the West 9 Mile came in.
Yep.
And we wanted them to set back a little bit. We didn't want them to build right up. And it wasn't a matter of
Right.
an average, but we were encouraging them not to be on the front. Am I mixing things up? or is
Because
that-
they had some
That's right.
flexibility. It was like a 0 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they had 0 and they built up to the sidewalk and it was just like a 4-story rebuilding, like right on the sidewalk. And we requested them to move it back.
Now, this does have, somewhere else it says something about 15 feet is a setback above the 3rd story on 9 Mile between Planavon and Bermuda. So if you're a higher building, we want you to set back the higher levels of it.
So like, sorry, I'm trying to like relate it to the rest of our ordinance, because we have this form-based. In the MXD2, we do allow for, I believe, like a duplex or a 2-unit, a 3-unit, or a 4-unit. So is that referencing the building type, the 2 to 4 unit? And then a multiple unit dwelling, and then what's the commercial? So this is where it's a little bit confusing, is these don't necessarily relate, right? Is this something that we,
Well, I think this is supposed to complement the form base. So 1 unit is a definition.
like, we have a mixed-use dwelling.
So
But that's only allowed in what zone districts?
does graphic help?
Which one?
The MXD1 and MXD2?
Is there a spot, is it just when, in the different building forms that say which districts it's permitted in? Okay, so the mixed-use dwelling, like, we basically need a matrix of the different districts and then the building types that are allowed in each of them. Do we have that?
We have that.
Okay.
So we have 2 things.
at that.
We have these sheets that say the R1 and where it's allowed. And then if we come way down to 3, maybe it is 403, 404, 405. We have this.
Okay, this is what we need, yeah.
So I'm looking at this, I'm a little bit confused by some of this. So like, let's say that let's say that you're a developer, and you would like to develop, and you want to build a single-family household in R1.
That's,
Okay, looking at this, okay, it looks like I can't do a single-unit dwelling.
you're spot on, but within the R1, R2, MXD, MXD2, CBD, all new construction work that involves the expansion, it says somewhere else,
It's confusing.
Yeah, it doesn't look.
hold on, it says somewhere else, I'm never going to find it.
That you don't need to follow these particular,
That you don't follow, one and two family are not,
you need to add that, I think, to that section then.
it's somewhere, I'm never going to find it right now.
Can't
But
be buried in there.
you're absolutely right.
Can't find it,
Yeah.
they can't find it.
Right.
You're absolutely right. I found it. You're absolutely right, Vice Chair Schulter, because then I looked at this, was like, so you can't even build a single-family home in the R1, and then it somewhere else says one and two family.
Well, I was under the impression when we were going through the study sessions that the building type standards were not applicable in R1, R2, and were only applicable in a certain few districts.
That's what this is saying.
And, but that's saying within the R1, R2, MXD1, it added R1 and R2 in those form-based districts.
No, that's the thing, is I think we said single-family and two-family, that's by right, you can do it. Where we care about your design is if you're putting a threeplex or a fourplex in a neighborhood, then we care what your design looks like.
Or multi-unit, yeah,
Or multi-unit, we care what that looks like.
et cetera, yeah. But, so yeah, we should just have something in those, in the single unit, 2-unit. Also, if he's suggesting that, because there's a stacked and a side-by-side, and those are differentiated in the different building types, so he kind of narrowed them to one. But, yeah, instead of the white box, we should have some like asterisk or something that references the exception, or, yeah.
Well, because like looking at like you're right when you said that way too few of these. And like the more time I spend with this, the more I look at this, I'm like, I think of this as like you're right, there is no gas station, but we like, and well, that usually wasn't applicable when we had C1, C2, but now we switched everything to the mixed use.
Typically, what you would have would be a drive-through, and then any kind of drive-through, a bank, a restaurant, et cetera, would have those design features in here, and then it would identify in the use. I mean, if you're doing a strict form-based code, you actually don't even have a use matrix or whatever, but you should have in the use matrix, this would then be aligned with this building type. And so since we don't have a drive-through, which is very interesting, how do we know what is, and how are you supposed to, without that matrix, know the variety that we have put in the use matrix and what they apply to as a building sign?
I don't know. This is the same thing, we went through that, there's a development proposed north of the 7-Eleven on East, and he wants to do like the townhomes like on the South Hilton, which I think are completely fine. And then I found a way that you could do it, but as I've applied one, I'm looking at the use chart, and then I'm looking at this form-based, and then I'm looking at all these varying setbacks, and I'm like, oh, this is a little harder than I thought.
Well, some of it will take getting used to, some of it needs to be cleaned up and actually corrected. So let's stick to what we can do this evening, and if there's anything in particular that we need to get done to move forward at this moment. And then I think we might have, maybe we can have a committee that would test some of this to kind of like walk through. I don't know if we've actually done that with, and I know that we have plenty of architects on our commission that could potentially say, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, like, how is that going to be then executed on?
Yeah.
Would that be helpful?
Even when you do that, you're looking through your lens of something very narrow, and then I get an application for a car wash. It's like, oh, I didn't think about that. So some of these, some of these changes are necessitated by a development on West Marshall Street where I'm like, okay, this doesn't work here. I think some of it's just going to be a next application comes in and you're like,
Case by case.
oh,
now.
it doesn't work. I don't want to start amending the code every time someone applies for something and
No,
then we start amending it.
certainly not.
Them.
But in the, like, very generally, it seems like we have some structural issues in terms of if this use comes in that is specified in our use chart, but is not specified in the, like, we need to be able to connect those two so that you know exactly which code and restrictions you're using on that specific
That's why I
building.
wrote the exception, is that if you're not one of these building types, then you're exempt and your materials might still apply. And I think you've said it before, I'm realizing it, like, if we go all form-based and get rid of the use chart and everything, that would be great. not love it, but it would be great. If we get rid of all the form-based and keep very dimensional stuff, that would be great. We're trying to do a hybrid, and that's where it's throwing it off.
They don't seem to be connected well enough that you can easily, but I mean, I've seen ordinances where it does work well, and so we just have to, I think, get there. And so that's why I guess I was suggesting a working group where we can kind of like identify how that works. Because really, the specific standards in each of the forms aren't so specific that you can't use them to apply to different, like, it's really just, I mean, there's some, fenestration and whatnot, but typically, like, it shouldn't be too confining that, with the exception of not having a drive-through form, all the other things should be able to fit into a form that we've already identified. That should be the case of the code.
It should be. I think if we went through the use chart, we would find probably a lot more. Like drive-throughs is one. Car wash is a very particular design. I could probably go through that and find, I would think, 12, 13, 14, 15.
But looking at, like, for example, car washes are in the, it was switched from C2 to MXD1, so. Back when it was C2, it was down the street, and it didn't have to comply to form-based zone. And so, we only were focused on form-based in a smaller section of the city. But now now that mixed use kind of exploded all throughout the city, it's.
The form-based, I thought the form-based was applying to all commercial. We added residential at the end, but I always thought it was applying to CBD, MXD, all of them. Let's try to get through this. You're absolutely right. All right, so going back up here, I think we were good with this. MXD2.
Well, we're a bit confused by this, I think, still. But yes, I think generally we agreed on MXD1, and then we got a little bit too in the details of like, well, what does this actually mean? Does the 2 to 4 units, is that applying to the use or the building type? Because it could be either. And so if we just want to do MXD2 generally and get rid of, we could also even have an asterisk of if you have, like if we wanted to, like we were talking about on the Pleasant Ridge, like having that bigger setback for a pure residential, are we even allowing just generally like only residential in this, or does it have to be? I think if it's in, well, MXD would include Marshall and whatnot, but.
If we got rid of the rows and it was just more consistent in the various zone districts, it would make our lives easier. I1 and I2 is very
Right.
simple.
What's the change in I2 or I1 in both?
That before said 15C, and that was for sites undergoing expansion, and I was confused. The maximum front yard setback may be set to match the existing buildings on site. So you had to be 15 feet, but you could match your buildings.
Yeah, I think that applies to like that, the place on, was it Wanda? That industrial facility that wanted to expand, and they had to go through, I think, BZA and then us because they were like, well, if we expand, we have to go to 15 feet off this street, and that makes it impossible for us to do what we need to do on the site, so we had to give them a variance to do.
For the front yard setback?
Yeah.
And so what I did is I get the 15 feet, like form-based and match, and then I appreciate the flexibility. That's why we wrote it in there. I just kind of crossed it off to say, you can be whatever you want in the I1, I2. I mean, do we care about the form-based in the I1 or I2? Like, do we
Well,
care?
it's not form-based. I mean, that's just a
sorry.
general setback regulation.
Form-based is, and does not apply to I1 and I2.
I didn't mean the form-based, yeah. Do we care in the I1 and I2 if people are not matching their neighbors?
I think, yes. If we don't want a new building to go in I1, like in our, Like, if someone takes down a building, and I'm kind of thinking of the area by like Woodward Heights or whatnot. We don't want someone to just like have this large setback and like,
Fill it with a parking
I
lot.
think most of those sites probably would prohibit that, but, you know, I don't think for a new building, we will want like unlimited setback.
With the goal of being like eliminating a front yard parking lot, right? Like for the aesthetic of keeping it in
So why don't I remove that?
neighborhood?
If we remove the I1 and I2, I don't have a problem keeping it. And then,
I mean, you can make it larger if you want like 20 foot or something. It's a maximum, right? Not a minimum, so
correct.
I would be comfortable with like 20 feet. but- And then if it's an expansion, that it's,
You get,
can go back to, like, we had the issue on Wanda.
all right, change that to 20, that provides a little flexibility. Anything on the MXDs?
But I think to the Commissioner Sabakatani's comments, separately, I believe it's discussed whether or not you can have a parking lot in the front.
That's true.
Yeah, so that would be, like, it could be a separate issue, right? I don't know this ordinance well enough, it's still in there, but I would hope so.
I have that as a footnote in commercial, but I don't know where it landed here.
Yeah.
We don't have to change this today. There's only one change I really think we need to do, but do we want to create a committee and just table this to a future on this?
On that,
I don't feel comfortable voting on it because I don't really understand all the ramifications of it.
of this front setback for industrial or for MXD? Or for any of it?
Just on the front setback, I mean, it's,
Oh,
I don't know.
It kind of then plays into the front yard, double frontage, corner lot thing too, right? In terms of if we're adjusting the setbacks and then adjusting what frontages count as setbacks, how that plays together.
Yeah, I feel, yeah, it's,
are you thinking of mixed or industrial, or specifically, or both?
still figuring that out.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were responding to something specific. So currently, so if we don't make any changes, the current MXD1, can you just go back to, so we can see what's existing?
Please.
So there was a minimum 15 that was inflexible for a multi-unit. And then, so that was the change there. We would just make that more flexible. And then currently, there's a 0-foot minimum and a 10-foot maximum for a multi-unit in the MXD2. And that's one that we think that we might want to potentially consolidate that, have a little bit more discussion on what that means to make a change to the MXD2. Do we want to make are we comfortable with the MXD1 where we're saying that that's flexible? I am.
Yes.
Okay.
So R2, the 15D is okay.
Yeah.
R2, 15D, okay. The MXD1, 15 to 15D is okay. Right? The MXD2, we want to talk about combining at a future time. And then I1 and I2 give a little more flexibility to be 0 to 20.
It would be
So if we
20
don't make the
with
change,
that,
oh, sorry,
sorry, would it be 20 with the C for,
with the exception?
if it's just an expansion, you can
Yeah,
match your existing?
20C. I was removing it altogether to say be whatever you want, but if we want it to be averaging of the neighborhood so it's consistent, we would leave 15C, or maybe give a little flexibility, maybe 20.
Is this something that where we're being responsive to an existing So this is something that we could also table, that we can look at if
You can table.
the ramifications of what does the existing industrial district look like? How could it be different between these
I don't think
changes?
there's anything in front of me that needs the extra couple feet or,
Okay, let's table
take
that.
that one off?
Let's just table that in industrial.
all right. So then we're going to leave C, so we're not going to reserve it, so we don't have anything to worry about. We added this at the last minute, staff did, and makes it too difficult. When adjacent, this is side setbacks. So it is MXD1, commercial, I1 and 2 commercial. We were saying 0 feet when adjacent to an R1 or R2 residential use or district. And I'm proposing we change it to when adjacent to an R1 or 2 residential district. And I'll give,
I would agree with that because we don't know if it's a residential use, that could change in the future. And we're talking about building form and what we want the form to look like. So something as temporary as a use should not determine what we want that new building to look like. And so I would agree with that change. And of course, it's going to be also determined by the building code of whether or not you can have that setback, correct?
yeah. I mean, you'll have to firewall it and do all the things you need to do for it.
Anyone disagree with that? All right.
C will get added back in, so that's declined. E, when adjacent to a residential, again, use or district, it'll be to an R1 or 2 residential district.
It goes a little bit counter to what I just said. A minimum yard setback is required. So why did you remove it in A and then add it in an E?
It's, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell what's added and what's not, because they're not all
So
struck
A
through,
would
but
read, when adjacent to an R1 or R2 residential district, a minimum yard setback of 20 feet is required. And then E would read, and this isn't correct right here, when adjacent to an R1 or R2 residential district, a minimum yard setback of 5 feet is required.
The A and the E is just whether it's a front yard or side yard or something.
A is minimum rear yard, and E is minimum side yard.
That makes sense to me.
And the reason I went with 6 is because nowhere else do we have the number 6. I'm sorry, the reason I went with 5
Yeah.
is because nowhere else do we have the number
Yeah,
6.
6 does make sense. Okay, so again, oh, it's crossed out. Okay, thank you. I could not
yeah,
see
it's
that.
kind of hard
Yeah.
to tell.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
crossed
I'll look behind me. No, it's easier to read.
But I need to change this too, when adjacent to,
Perfect size for me.
when adjacent to an R1 or R2, so it's consistent with A. I'm sorry if you can't see. E, okay, change like A. Oh, we're going to be done soon. This is exciting. We're on page 2. This is just nomenclature stuff, so for 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit. The technicality here, if a detached garage is provided, the side yard setback of the primary residential structure must be a minimum of 9 feet. So this is a typical infill lot, and we're saying you need to provide enough room on the side of your house for a driveway. Right, that's what 9 feet is. I'm clarifying it's either side the person wants. The side yard setback of either side, not both,
But it has to be the side of the garage.
the side of the house.
The side of the house with the garage on that side, right? Or it's like,
Well, I mean, it depends if they do a a side load garage.
okay.
Well, that's, I think that's an
I mean, you might not even have a garage.
But it says if a detached garage is provided, the side yard setback of the residential structure must be a minimum of 9 feet. With it, so you're basically, you have to allow for the driveway width.
So you can get the vehicle back there. You can't put a garage, a full garage behind
Yeah.
your house and leave like 3 feet. Alley loaded would be exempt, because if you're alley loading, then you don't have to provide that. You can make your house as big as you want. And I would actually add in here and I think maybe it's another one, alley loaded or corner lots. So again, if you're seeing the garage from the corner, then you don't have to provide a side yard setback to your house.
Does that also include shared driveways?
We don't really allow for shared driveways.
We actually don't allow them.
Yeah, because I have a shared driveway
Okay.
at my house. There's some on East Ferndale.
Yeah, I've had one in East Saratoga.
Shared, yeah.
Right behind here.
On East Saratoga, too.
Yeah,
East Troy has a bunch of,
good point. We should probably should allow for them, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We'll put
Yeah,
that on
let's- please,
on the
please.
table. That.
Yeah, I guess at least one side, at either side.
Adequate for either, right? That's how the rule is right now.
So we will table the conversation, but I think that's a good point that potentially we should allow for a shared driveway. But in this instance, it would not be, you would need the 9 feet. You couldn't do like 4.5 or whatnot. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
so we're okay with it. Do you have questions about like either side, one of the two sides or something? Is that-
Yeah, and like on one side, the setback of one side, because my first reading was like, I would need to have 9 feet on like either side, like both
Yeah.
sides of the structure. Like I get that it's like either or, but it sounds like
I read it
side
the
yard
same.
setback of either needs to be 9 feet. And I was like,
I'll
I don't even think I
clarify.
have 9 feet on one side of my house.
I'll clarify.
Yeah,
Either-
just so that it's
Just say
clear
one
that it's
side.
one side.
One side.
Yeah.
Or say one side yard setback,
Or at least one side.
at least, yeah,
primary
something
structure,
like
something
that,
like
yeah. I agreed. I thought that was confusing as well.
I was like, I
know,
couldn't
but,
do anything to my garage then, because there's only
Is there a
like 4 feet
minimum-
on one side of my house because the lots are so small.
Setback for a side-loaded garage, or can you like put it right up to where the building, because there's a couple in my neighborhood where there's not enough room for somebody to park their car in the driveway, but they still try to. I don't think that's addressing. I don't think it's a really big problem either. Like I said, it's really niche, but,
There's a section that says that the garage, if it's attached, has to be a certain amount of feet back. It's in one of the
5
diagrams.
feet, the
But
plane
even
of
if
the
it's
garage.
detached, though, it could still be an issue potentially, but yeah, so is there a setback? Well, I think also it just says that you're not supposed to.
You can't have it in the front yard more than 25%, and we're only allowing 9-foot wide, single doors.
yeah, I think it's covered.
I guess it's not necessarily the garage that's 9 feet, just the access.
The door, we're only allowing single doors, and if you have a 2-car garage, you have to have 2 9-foot doors separated by a 2-foot space.
Yep.
The real issue is parking on the sidewalk, right?
Parking on a sidewalk on a side-loaded garage. That's-
Yeah, but
that's right. But that's
that's
covered
actually,
elsewhere.
that's covered by, you're just not supposed to park on the sidewalk. Yeah.
Impeding traffic or pedestrian traffic or something by the police.
Yeah.
I-1 and I-2, changed this to be in compliance, but we will not, did we say change the 20?
Wait, where'd we skip to?
There was nothing else. We're down in I-1 and I-2.
Oh, what about on MXD?
I didn't change anything there.
Through the chair, did you skip the R1? I had the question about the side yard. Or is that in a later section? We've skipped around a bunch.
I don't remember.
Was,
There we go.
We changed it. There's a side yard requirement. We had 5-foot side yard or 3-foot if fire rated, and we took out the 3-foot if fire rated, and I was
yeah,
wondering.
I don't think we've got to it yet, because I had
Oh,
the
that's
same
down,
comment.
and I think I,
Sorry, we skipped around, and I just wanted
Yeah,
to.
no, thank you, that's a good point, 'cause
we'll hit that.
I have the same comment.
So in I-1 and I-2, in I-1 and I-2,
Sorry, so in the MXD, sorry, just real quick, there's a, you didn't make a comment, but, in section 210, the MXD 2, there's a side yard setback, minimum of 0 feet. It says that if there's a 2 to 4 unit residential building, then we have a 5-foot setback required. Which was not in the other chart that we were just talked about this setback, right?
The table.
I don't know.
I know, but I think that we should just remove that comment, because why would we need a setback if there's a 2 to 4 unit residential building in an MXD2?
I'm not following what the question is because I'm so
I'm,
beat on numbers.
So in MXD2, there's a side yard setback of a minimum of 0 feet. So you can build side yard to side yard. Unless you have a 2 to 4 unit residential building.
Then you gotta
Then
be,
it requires a 5-foot setback. Is that necessary? We can also table this, but
MXD2,
we're changing similar,
yeah, so 5 and then 0E, which is.
oh, it wasn't up there. Okay.
That, so yes, if you could be 0 feet if you're multifamily, unless you're adjacent to the residential
A residential district.
district, then you need to be 5 feet. So it's 0 feet, but it's 5 feet, except if you're a 2 to 4 unit, you have to be 20 feet. I think,
Table it, but I think I'd like to bring that back up at some point. I don't know why
I think there's probably a lot of mistakes if you start going back and forth. I think if we want to create a committee and look at the dimensional chart along with all those pages and just make sure they're correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if we can just like superimpose this table where applicable onto the like pages that have during the review to make sure that, I don't know.
Could just take MXD if we had 2 lines and just get rid of all the other stuff and just put it down? Or, I mean, the other thing is when we have these, do we need all this stuff? Do we need?
It's kind of like duplicative a little bit, right?
It is. Can't we just have the use chart?
I guess
Or
it's
the
kind of
dimensional
nice to have the chart as an overview so you can easily compare
Yeah, okay.
them. I was just saying for the point of like making sure that the detailed pages match the table, just to have, so that we're not like scrolling back and forth, like we could,
Well, I think why we
for
did-
like a committee-based review, we can just like have the table and then compare them directly.
I think why we did all this is because, it's EFG, so you can see what is a side yard, what is a rear. I think we passed planning class, do I need to know what?
I think it potentially makes it easier for folks, but it's also obviously complicating it for us. So I think having a subcommittee makes sense to kind of go through some of this. I would just add to the list, I think that the lot width of 100 feet for MXD2 is excessive in that most of the lots in our MXD2 do not meet that lot width. And so I'm not sure how that made it in there. So I'm just going to add that to the list. We don't have to do it tonight.
Okay.
So,
Go. Oh, do you have something?
It was maybe the little history, maybe I'm mixing it up, but it was a matter of getting the 80/20 and having enough room for a drive or 2 drives and then having enough building. So I think it was kind of a given dimension that your drive would take up so much space that you'd need, and if drives are 20 feet or 24 or whatever, and 80% of your building on top of that, then you'd almost need 100-foot wide to do that. If
But
you had a drive.
If you have a drive.
So let's put this back to committee. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, okay.
how
That's a
it
good
was out
point.
there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
okay, so we'll make the changes, the couple little changes, and then,
So
I
did
think
you,
there's still going to be errors in here, and I think we should
Yeah.
bring it back in a couple months. And I'll deal with anybody that applies in the meantime. All right, general provisions. We have a definition now, or we have a abandoned structure program. It's called vacant and abandoned structures. So I call this vacant and abandoned businesses. We said during any time that they're closed for 30 consecutive days, they have to do these things. 30 is too short. That's just not reasonable. So I said 90 days. And then within 30 additional days after that, all non-conforming signage has to be removed. If it conforms to the code, we don't really care if it stays. We're not going to make them remove it. But all non-conforming signage has to be removed. We had in here, this includes the requirement that ADU must be set back at least 5 feet. Yeah, so it says, this is about accessory structures, not ADUs. Then we say accessory ADUs are regulated by this section. And then randomly just want to tell you that it's a 5-foot setback. And I don't know that we need to say that here. I think we just say go to that section. Consistent with R1, R2 residential district versus use. And then I just removed the 3 feet because it was just one more layer, but I think I heard from a couple people they'd rather have the 3 feet, so we can decline that, if that's what you want to do.
Through the chair, I feel that impact, especially if you're on a narrow lot with a single drive-in, if you have 5 feet and then you need 2 feet before you have a garage door, you're pushing 7 feet over trying to get into a garage in a 9-foot drive. So you really need a lot of room to navigate to get back. And I think that pinches a lot of people in small lots.
That makes sense. I was like, let's keep this simple. But the building code allows it if you fire rate it and you can have it and go do it.
There's a lot of nonconformities as well that would create. So I think, especially if we're trying to encourage people to build ADUs above a garage, et cetera, I think it would be helpful to leave it in.
A down here, in the case of double frontage lot, the CE director determines the rear yard. So in one section, we say double frontage, both, there is no rear yard. Then here it was said that the CE director determines the rear yard. So,
So is that in terms of, for the purposes of an accessory structure?
yeah,
But so it's still confusing. It doesn't like really tell you how you could put an accessory structure on a front yard,
On a double loading.
on a double, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it says both are front, and then over here, I mean, yes, it is part of accessory.
Basically, it's an exception that you can, in the case of a double frontage lot, put an accessory structure in the front yard. The CED director would determine which of those front yards would be the rear.
I guess, okay. We want that
So isn't it determined by street address, though?
customarily.
Right.
So anything on 9 Mile, name something, Tiger Lily, it's 9 Mile.
Right, I'm thinking like Inman, is it? Has like through lots, so there's like a street side and a garage side.
Inman?
Yeah, it's residential.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where an accessory might be residential. it's
Want one?
So,
Oh, is Inman, when you come
north
up,
of Woodward Heights, backs up on Paxton, I think there's some,
There are garages that exit onto Paxton.
It's not an alley, it's a double frontage.
Yeah.
Okay, so we might want to leave that in and just make it a little bit clearer in the language of what that actually means.
where am I? So we're going to delete the 3 feet.
On Gainsborough too, right?
Or
Garages
delete
and-
the edit to the 3 feet.
Yeah, delete the edit to 3 feet and clarify in the, what do we want to do for A?
So I think if we just, clarify that language so that it's basically is allowing for an accessory structure in the case of a double frontage lot in that front yard, but either the CE director or the street address determines which yard the accessory structure would be placed in. I think remove rear because that makes it confusing.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, determines the front yard.
Which yard, yeah.
Yeah.
Allowing projections, we had architectural features and cantilevers. And we talked with the building official. We put cantilevers in A. So architectural features are bay windows, cantilevers, chimneys, awnings. What we didn't account for, which he wanted to do separately, was building eaves. So we just changed around. Building eaves may extend past the vertical face of a building up to 2 feet, so you have an eave, if you have a 5-foot setback.
So we're limiting the amount that the overhang can be?
Overhangs should only go like into the front. They shouldn't be able to go into the side. Do we say any of that?
Why not?
Because if you go 2 feet, if you cantilever over 2 feet and then you do a 2 feet eve, now you're property line.
Well, it's
Right, but it
restricted by the
clarifies-
distance. then,
yeah.
right? You're restricted from your distance from the property line in that case, not necessarily by the eave or the cantilever, right?
The
Like
building,
both of those provided the building is set back at least 3 feet from the lot line. So if you have a side yard that's 5, you can have a 2-foot overhang or a 2-foot.
I think it should be either or is what I'm getting.
Yeah, like as long as you have that 3 feet.
Not just either, I mean, not, either or, not either and, yeah.
So the combination of any of these shouldn't be more than 3 feet into a side yard? Is that what you're saying?
I say 2 feet, but 3 feet would be acceptable.
Oh, 2 feet, so you have the 3 feet in between. Gotcha. So can we, maybe we just add a footnote to the table of the combination? I want to, so for a front yard projection, with the architectural features including awnings, I think that we should allow for more than 2 feet for an awning, and maybe we want to separate awning out.
so hold on.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, yeah.
3.03, we want to get rid of the cantilever of the building altogether and put cantilevers and architectural features in A and just say all of it can extend?
I don't know how you want to do it, but the only thing that I'm concerned about is having a double projection technically on a side yard, on a 5-yard setback.
So,
That's the only thing I'm concerned about.
so we can add a footnote saying the combination of the projections cannot exceed 2 feet into a side yard.
Why is the concern that that extra space is less permeable or?
Because technically, you could have both houses going almost 4 feet in the side yard of 5 feet only, and then you could have just a little 2-foot gap. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem reasonable to me.
For safety, because
Required
typically
for a lot
you're
of things, yeah.
requiring it for a fire, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, only one 2-foot projection
Into a side yard.
into side yard.
So a combination into the side yard shouldn't exceed 2 feet.
And then you, Chair Foster, you're on.
Sorry, yeah, so that one's done. So the second one is having an awning project. I think an awning should be able to project more than 2 feet, especially into a front yard or a rear yard.
Where's that at?
So that's including architectural features, I believe.
Oh. Awnings, okay.
Could the awning be combined into the covered and uncovered porches line, the 4th, 5th row?
And so there's where we would allow for a covered porch to go 3 foot into a side yard. Is that typical?
So what was your thing about awnings? Because I think.
Yeah, so I think we should I think awnings should probably be pulled
What's your,
out
what's
of
your
architecture.
concern?
Is that a 2-foot awning is worthless.
Yeah, it's like, I mean,
Well, here's the thing. It would be bigger than that. So this talks about only, because we went through this at staff, what's in your side setback. So let's pretend your house is 12 feet away, right? You'd have an awning for 7 feet to get to your side yard, because you can be in your property, and then you get 2 feet for that.
This is project from the building facade 2 feet.
yeah, this is may project up to, there's nothing that says anything about may project up to 2 feet into the setback. This just says, hey, you're limited to a 2-foot awning, sorry.
Tell me where we're at, sorry.
So it says may project 2 feet from the building facade and must be set back at least 3 foot from all lot lines. It doesn't allow you to go 2 feet, more than 2 feet from the building facade. Which I think in all the cases except the awnings, as listed in footnote A, is okay. So we can pull awnings out
Pull awnings out of
of architectural features.
Pull awning out of subscript A. And then?
Should it go with the covered or uncovered porches, stairs, patios, and decks? It's basically the same thing, right?
It would make more sense there. It's a covered porch, an awning is.
Yeah.
And put in
Covered or uncovered porches, stairs, patios, and decks.
covered or uncovered porches section. Okay, and then you had an issue with the 5-foot maximum under covered and uncovered, or no?
Sorry?
The covered or uncovered 5-foot maximum. So if you were averaging, let's use an example, if you were averaging, if you're on Pinecrest and your neighbors are 30 feet back, your setback is 30 feet. If you could
Five
be,
is stingy.
if you could be 50% of the
Oh,
minimum
wait, that's
set-
front yard.
If you could be 50% of the minimum setback, then you could have a 15-foot projection out. So you might have this huge projection out. So that's why I wrote the 5-foot.
5-foot maximum in the front yard sounds right.
I thought you pointed out in your comments, no?
I might have confused it with being in the front yard.
I mean, if you're in your setback, the front yard, 5 feet is more than enough to project into your front setback.
You know, in my comment, it actually says 5-foot maximum for a rear deck. So I was just confusing it.
Okay.
So also architectural features, talks about there being cantilevers, bay windows, chimneys, and so whatnot. What about carports?
I don't know if that's an architectural feature, that's a structure.
Okay.
I mean, but it should be defined.
Find so much stuff on.
I do want to talk about architectural features a little bit more.
Okay.
Thinking this through from my residential design days, and let's say you've got a 2-foot deep fireplace that's a cantilevered, like, direct vent unit, and it's not a full chimney, it's just got a direct vent, and you're putting a little sloped roof on it. So you would have to have zero awning or zero overhang on that in order to comply. Typically, I would put at least a 1-foot overhang on that. So like, I'm thinking, if you've got a cantilever or something, you can at least have a foot overhang to cover that.
That was the building official's whole thing, was then you're gonna have this sharp cutoff of the wall. And I think he said in Birmingham, they came up with like, maybe it was like 6 inches for every foot of overhang, or 2 inches for every foot of overhang, or something to provide some kind of overhang on a cantilever.
Like something.
Yeah, I would rather have an overhang than a flush edge on those side protrusions. Otherwise, makes it look like a,
But it's up to the designer to fit into the 2 feet that they've been given.
Is it, can there be anything, so you're talking about an overhang,
let's say we got just a 2-foot chimney coming out
yeah,
from the building, but it's not going up full height, it's not going over the roof. It's just a direct vent, so it's got a little spark arrestor coming out the side. You're gonna have a little slope roof that comes on that. You want that to come out at least a foot past.
but it could be at the roof line. Is there anything that we should like determine like at or near the roof line, like it can be an exception or like?
Let's say you have a 2-story house. You only have to go up a story with that chimney.
Okay. So to Commissioner Newman's point, is that just the design?
Well,
With the
does that mean
restrictions you
push your
have,
whole-
or-
You gotta push your whole house back,
6 inches?
Okay. So Birmingham came up with a different solution. We can use something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I came across the 5-yard setback, pretty standard across most housing zoning ordinances. So cantilevering into the side yard 2 feet is pretty standard. The awning, or the overhang on it, though, is the part that's the variable, I think. Let's say you've got like a prairie-style house and it's got the 2-foot deep, that's one thing. I agree with that. You could almost, if you have like a 3-foot awning, you could just take a chimney right up underneath it and bury it underneath that awning. That'd be one way to handle it. But if it's just a small little roof and it's not burying under like the overhang of the main roof, then I would want to see at least a 1-foot overhang.
I mean, my house, we have a chimney that doesn't go past, or it's past our roof line, but our roof line doesn't cantilever, and I don't think it looks terrible. Like all of the Sears homes in the southwest corner.
I didn't design a lot of residential, so I'm not going to speak to that. But from what I remember seeing, the cantilevers go into the front and rear setbacks. They don't typically go to the sides because the sides are usually pushed out to that 5, and then once you get the eave, then that's it. I don't think everything has to look the same. I'm not trying to get to that, but that's all I was saying earlier.
I mean,
I've seen a million.
my house,
side-
my dining room is cantilever 2 feet out, you know,
Into the side yard or into
the side yard.
into the 5-foot setback?
Well, mine's into the driveway.
Right, and that I see all the time. That I've seen too.
So with the suggested edits by Roger, what are we okay with and not okay with? So the architectural features, we want to change to 2 feet. Or not? That's good. Okay. And then the cantilevering is the building use may extend past the vertical face of a building up to 2 feet. And then we added a footnote per our discussion that you can't combine the two for more than 2 feet. And then we also talked about taking awning out of the architectural feature and putting it into covered and uncovered.
Through the chair, so we're looking at it if it's on the shorter of the setback sides, right? So, but like, to your point, if you're on the side that has the driveway, why couldn't you project 2 feet and then have, like, you're not impeding so why are we limiting a cantilever when we're not, what we're looking at is we're trying to keep homes
Out of the
6
setback.
feet apart? Like, so that at least if it's a building is setback at least 3 feet from all lot lines seems to be I didn't realize in looking in this angle, I now see that that's crossed out. So
So for tonight's discussion, are we okay with the edits that we've discussed? And then do we want to further discuss how we can better write these in the future? Does that work?
Yes.
Sounds like we still want to make some changes, but we're okay with what I had just spelled out? Yes. Okay.
So it looks like the changes are clarify it so there's only one projection 2 feet from the side yard. Right, whether that's your eaves, your cantilever, you get 2 feet. Remove the, pull out of A, the awnings, and put that in the covered or uncovered porches. Maximum 5-foot front setback,
sorry, you're saying keep the 2 feet only for cantilever and overhang?
is that what you're saying?
Is what I said, but I appreciate what Sam is saying, because I would hate to see that. That's just waiting for rot and destruction, and that's a worse condition.
Yeah, I concur from my residential days. I echo.
So you get a
Commissioner
one,
Shelley.
you get a 1 foot, you get a 2 foot projection, and you can have a 1 foot eave.
Or we should come up with some,
Exception.
So is that why it was 3 and 2 before?
yeah,
Should we just leave
because then it's,
3 in the architectural features?
because then each house has to be at least 6 feet away from each other, which is,
It's good practice.
So the
yeah,
first part may,
especially if it's fire rated.
so the first part may project up to 3 feet, but then you got to be 3 feet, so you can only be 2 feet.
If we leave it how it's written right now, and it says, and must be set back at least 3 feet from all lot lines, and then under eaves, must be set back 3 feet from all lot lines, and, just so long as everything says that a combination of these things, and it still must be set back 3 feet, then you get the 6-foot break. I think that's reasonable.
Okay, so we would say architectural features A may project up to
2 feet.
2 feet from the building facade and must be set back at least 3 feet.
So, silly question, maybe this,
Oh, wait a minute, no.
why do we care how long each of these architectural features are? Just tell them it needs to be 3 foot away from the lot lines.
Yeah.
Like, let the architect or the designer do what they want.
I think Scott's concern was somebody's going to push the cantilever issue, and they do it in Birmingham, and then have no eave. And so, yes, it's generally they'll let the architects figure it out, but they're going to push that, then there's going to be no.
We're not saying no, because they can put 0, right?
It could be flush. Usually then you have like a 1-inch trim, like it
Right.
could be 1 inch to.
Yeah, I guess if the intention is that we want at least 6 feet between every
5 feet.
element,
Or whatever.
is it 5 feet?
Between the house, or,
between whatever, the furthest element on one house and the furthest element.
oh, sorry, 6, oh.
3 and 3.
6.
Is that?
Five is a new number. We weren't talking about 5. Don't.
That's where 6 came from.
Yeah.
So if that is it, then I agree, then like, you just work it backwards from there.
So it may project up until, well, but there must be setback.
All protrusions from the building cannot extend any further than 3 foot from the lot line.
And so I don't think we need to tell them how large their architectural features can be on their buildings.
It's just, yeah, they're gonna get,
Right, so we'll combine them only, you have to, all your projections have to be 3 feet from your lot line.
No, yeah, no closer than 3 feet from the lot line.
I got it. We're going to do it. All right, I skipped over this because I don't think this applies really. Clear vision. Within a clear vision area, there could be no fence structure, and I made it clarified planting or similar between 30 and 8 feet. This standard does not apply to buildings, and I want to be clear, that meet the setback of the zoning district. But, because we have like 0 foot setback, and you might have an issue. I added, where buildings are located within a clear vision area, the city may require the installation of a convex traffic mirror, just in case there's some issue. No issue, I like it. The area at the intersection of 2 streets within a required setback, I don't know, it's just the area with, at intersection of 2 streets measured 15 feet each way. The height exceptions, I did add rooftop patios, because people are putting those up there. Just to be clear, including any covered areas, safety fencing, or similar. I didn't like this before. We had a different height standard for lights of 18 feet in R1 and R2. I'm sorry. Yeah. 18 feet in R1, R2, MXD1, MXD2. They were all 18 feet. And then in CBD, or the Woodward Heights overlay, we had 16 feet. I just changed them all to 18 feet. Just 18 feet. In industrial, you can go higher.
Should that be I1 and I2, or do we call them I and D1?
Nope, it's just I1 and I2, see? E lighting, I and D to I.
District.
I saw that, I'll get that. I was just going by quick and didn't want anyone to see it. All right, lighting is actually in the environmental standards. So I just removed it all from here. When we mess with chapter 6 or 7, maybe we'll include it in the zoning code, but these numbers differ from the other ones. We've already had someone call us out and say, well, this section's more restrictive.
So I have a quick question for section 3.09 in regards to the fences. Does that also include any kind of tree stumps or anything like that that needs to be removed on the property line?
3.09?
Yeah.
Fences, what do you mean?
So I'm trying to figure out, does that include like the debris on the property? Because some of the fences right now, some folks may install the fence, but it's also hitting against a tree stump. That makes sense? Because what's going to happen with that tree stump is going to damage that fence down the line. And I've seen it a lot that folks are doing, yeah.
So this is related to, like, your fences have to be in good condition.
Right.
They have to be, no fabric.
Right.
You're saying, are you saying that the person has to remove the tree, give a distance away from the tree?
No, it's just a tree stump. It's not even, the tree is chopped, but the stump is still there. And they put in the fence, right.
And the person's going in a straight line and just
Right.
lays it around and goes around?
Or it's just on top of the actual stub itself.
And so what are you saying, like, tree stumps have to be removed?
Yes.
Curious.
Because eventually it's going to damage the fence itself. That's what's happening too, because a lot of stuff is in between and stuff is going to start growing. I know a lot of folks have concerns about that.
I'm not against it. Like, the double fencing that we don't allow has worked really well. We've had 4 people call us and want an exception. And we've said, you got to talk to your neighbor. We're not giving these exceptions out freely. And they've come to a conclusion and removed the double fence. So if you push people to do something, most of the time they will. So not opposed to it, but, you know, removing tree stumps, I mean, I think people that come down their front yard and just leave them they need help. Like, why didn't you remove that tree stump? It's just sitting there. But, you know, to remove tree stumps are $600, $800. You have a company come out, they're not cheap. So it does become a little bit like micromanaging something.
Right.
I'm not going to say we don't micromanage some things sometimes, but
Right.
it would be up to, if you think it's a problem, we could say something in there. I probably would like to make an exception somehow.
Because I know like some folks are using zip ties because it's damaged, the fence is zip tie, and they kind of close it. So with the tree stump as well. So there's.
Would the basic rule be the fencing has to be continuous when installed, that like you
It
can't
has to be completely clear.
stop it to go through?
I'm less concerned about tree stumps, honestly, than I am the trees themselves. I see lots of people who don't want to remove a tree, and then some of them, it's a maintenance issue. It's like if you remove it quicker, it's not going to cause a problem. But then some are huge trees that might be $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 to remove. Are we going to tell them you lose 3 feet of your land so you can clear it?
I think to Roger's point, some of this, we have to make sure that we can operate like the compliance of it. And so it can make, we don't want to make it too onerous for the city to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not less worried about stumps than I am just trees. But again, everyone has, like, it's an important tree and people want to just go around it. But then, you know, they're causing problem. I mean, and really it's their problem, I guess, if they install their fence and it breaks down. I don't know, Councilor Palka, do you have any thoughts? Because we've talked tree ordinances before. We've talked.
I don't have anything.
I'm just concerned about the stumps and that.
Councilman Polika wants to go to bed.
I've had a very, very long day.
We can table it.
And I don't think many of us have had the chance to eat dinner, so I think we're starting to get a little bit antsy and grouchy.
Okay, let's table that. Let's run through. Let's see if I can go quick. Height exceptions, lighting is in another section, so that just came out. Exemptions is in the other section as well. What's not in the other section is prohibited lighting, so we can leave that in there. Making sure things are called the same. We're supposed to have this waiver section so we can see all the things we can waive. We did not put some things in there. They were missed, so we're just adding the things that are waivable. Architectural standards, and this is where it gets probably a little bit of time. Sections 403, 404, and I added 405, may be waived by the approving body in whole or in part upon a determination that the building design is. So I really just added 405 there. And it's not grossly dissimilar to other nearby buildings. It's not adversely affecting the desirability. It's not impairing the stability. And it's not adversing the public health. So 403 is building materials can be waived. 404 is general architectural standards, which is very basic, balconies, awnings. 405 is the building type standards, though. So I added 405, it can be waived by the approving body, as long as it's not affecting anybody and all those. But I added from the other version, if there is not a building type design similar, or if it's an addition. So.
I agree with getting rid of the addition mark. If you have something that's already not conforming, you can't all of a sudden just make it magically one of these forms. So I agree that addition should be removed.
It doesn't require us to.
Is that?
Well, I guess there'd be a determination that one would, because it's an
Construction work
addition.
that involves the expansion of the building, so I agree with your remark. Or maybe I'm jumping ahead.
No, that would be, I'm saying it's still subjective, but it's not, because this is saying if you're an addition, you don't have to comply.
But, I mean, it doesn't mean, so it's not like you have to build that building that's like drawn. It's just the regulation, it's just like having any regular zoning code, that if you have an addition, you have to meet the new zoning code. It's those
Maybe just the new.
restrictions.
I think with the building design, I'm getting really stuck on the picture too.
Yeah, the picture doesn't have anything to do with except
Can we
with
remove those
intent.
pictures?
We put so much work putting the pictures in.
Yeah, but they give such a false impression of these little,
Now that I think about it, it's throwing me off a lot too. I see a bank, I think it has to look like exactly like this.
Yeah.
you see a theater and it looks like it
I'm
has
not
to
a
be
fan.
from the
What I had
1940s.
suggested in our process was something much more vague, where you're basically showing the massing, like you're showing the restrictions on the massing, not a specific design of a building.
Like just an extruded.
Yeah, it's like a 3D
building
zoning
area.
restriction. Yeah. I think that would make a lot more sense, and that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish, is like, this is the building form that we're going for, not a specific design, because we want people to have architectural license to create what they want to create. And we wanted to make it more open, inviting, and available versus restrictive and prescriptive.
I had a developer say something to me today. It's pretty much all described in the ordinance now on how I gotta design my building.
Right here?
Yeah.
And I don't think that was our intent.
I think that now that we say that, I think the picture is just, I'm not reading any of the words or the materials. I'm just seeing the picture and saying it's gotta look
Yeah, I
like
mean,
this.
because if you read the words, it's just,
It doesn't handcuff you, but.
no, it's saying, we have different building materials per, what are these called? Building type?
Yeah, the building.
And then it does talk about, fenestration, et cetera, and there's some differences by building type or form. But it's not a prescriptive, like, you don't have to, if you're building an addition on a building, you don't have to make it look like that. It's just like, you have to comply with these specific restrictions, which is what we've always done in the past with the zoning ordinance.
So why don't I think there's two sections that really need focus, is the dimensional standards and then this form base to talk it out.
Which are essentially the same thing. It's
Yeah.
awkward that they're separate. It's like almost duplicative, but
And I think maybe we don't have to change this stuff. The committee can come back and look at these two sections.
okay, yeah.
We're almost home eating. Look at that. All right, so we're going to skip this then. So decline 403, 404, 405.
Build this hotel.
This is just the language from the zoning code. We'll leave the waivers in here for now.
Can I just mention real quick, I think on the building, I think it's so different also to look with an architectural eye versus a common eye. What that does for me is like, oh, this is what you mean. And I'm not like actually looking at any architectural features, because I don't have the skill set to be like, oh, well, they want us to do this, this, and that. Because we're not telling you to do that. It's more of like, for the common person of like, this is kind of like the intent, is this kind of building. And to me, it's really just a box. We're looking at a hotel for those who can't tell.
Well, like, if
But like, so I think it's a lot different for architects. They're like, oh my, that makes me think that I need to do these specific architectural features. And I don't think that's the intent.
That's how I see it. So when I'm looking at the marquee and the marquee's right in the middle of the building, I'm like, has to be
What
this
if it was
building
on
with a
the,
marquee.
yeah.
Well, the main thing I look at is when I look at this, when I look at the pictures, I think, oh, this is the because all the pictures kind of are a very picturesque
Kind of a retro
like
kind of.
a Rockwell, like a retro era town, and it seems to be, Yeah, see, it's almost like we're trying to push this whole retro look
They have a
by
look
looking
like
at this.
Though
but-
we don't actually require it. And so I think it is very difficult to have that in your head. Yes.
And then back before we kind of pared some of this down during the planning, during the ordinance production, it was telling us stuff like you need to have soldier courses above every window of masonry. You need to have, so it was very, very prescriptive.
Pared it back.
And when we pared it back, I think maybe it's worth paring back some of the graphics too.
Can we set a goal to wrap up by 9?
I told my wife I'm leaving
It's
at
up
9.
to
so
you.
Whether or not we're done or not, I'm gone.
All right, let's just go through.
We do,
Language,
yeah, and we will have quorum with 6 folks. So if anyone has to leave at any time, feel free.
this is all just names. I didn't actually review any of these because it gets overwhelming. This is just keeping the names consistent. Unit.
Gosh, these new members are lightweights. We used to have meetings till 11. Kidding. Feeling the silence while he's looking for our next change.
All right, accessory dwelling units must be located on a lot with a 1-unit, 2-unit, or 3-unit.
Would this also be revised to accessory dwelling?
LAU?
Yep.
Thank you. Good catch.
So we'll only allow 4 per max, so I didn't want to say principal dwelling, very, very clear. Can't be split. And I don't know why we're saying ADUs are intended to complement. And then we said single
You
family.
basically combine A and B, but you included a 3-unit, whereas B was a single unit or double unit. Yeah.
Adult business, I just,
Sorry, I thought for that, the clarification that you made to A, I thought part of the council's,
Approval?
was to not allow ADs on 3-unit dwellings such that it wouldn't become a fourplex.
no, we allow 4. 4 is the max.
Yep. I think they had changed that. That was a part of the conversation, but ultimately, they allowed the AD with the 3-unit.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 3 or 4 special land use.
No, I think it's, you can put a 1-unit, 2-unit, 1-unit, 1-unit in ADU, 2 in ADU, 3 in ADU, 4, I don't know if I'm
A
right. is a special-
3-unit and a 4-unit are both special use.
Yeah.
Yep.
Adult business, just, we have these definitions, adult foster care, child care center, foster care. So just correct them. Adult businesses define,
Child foster care.
approving body versus planning commission. This was really good. Any waiver granted for a special land use approval will expire once the business it was approved for ceases operations. An escape lane for a drive-through, the approving body may waive it for sites using an existing building. It's only an existing building, a drive-through, an escape lane could be waived. I think Caribou might not have one.
I'm sorry to complicate this, but for the special land use, we're saying that expires once that business that it was approved for ceases operations. Should we say use rather than business? Because what if it's a change in ownership of the same use?
Any waiver granted for a specific special land use approval will expire once the business it was approved for. So we're thinking like, if you got it for Subway and you want to change it to a Starbucks, that business changed.
But the use stayed the same because it's still
Basically,
a
a drive-through restaurant.
Yeah, but then they have 2 different stacking requirements. So if we say the use,
Well, the use is defined with different requirements. So so if you say the use, I don't think a Starbucks and a Subway as a restaurant would actually have different stacking requirements, except through the special land use. So that's what you're saying is
Yeah.
that
they have totally
we
different
might
business
actually want,
models.
okay.
So you got to come in again, and if we think it's appropriate.
Because the intensity of the use could change per business, not per use.
Correct. A Starbucks and a Subway
That
would
makes
both be the
sense.
same, but.
Thank you.
Caribou and Starbucks aren't the same.
Got that right.
I think we're in marijuana. Mobile vending, novelty stores. I copied this.
Just cleaning up the specific language of the 500 feet radius.
Yep.
Yeah, but it should be still, again, the existing school, right? I think in the previous, for the adult business, your text clarified that it can't be within a 500-foot radius of an existing K-12 school, library, or public park, right? In other words, because then if a school comes in, you can't be like, oh, you're not allowed to be here anymore, because somebody.
So 5.12B, match the adult business?
Or at least they should be,
It's also, I mean, I think it helps clarify, but it's legally not allowed. It's called coming to a nuisance or something like that, so. But I think it really helps clarify for everyone's reading use, yeah.
Outdoor dining, so we have this section that says outdoor dining is with Chapter 7. Chapter 7 relates to,
For the record, Commissioners Michelle and Showalter are leaving at 8:59. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
we should be able to wrap this up soon. Outdoor dining says is subject to the requirements of Chapter 7. Chapter 7 talks about getting a permit if you're on public property. So that's for that. Then we have this whole thing that says you need a permit from the city for private property, but we don't have people do that. And a good example is Soho. It says you need an annual permit. We don't make Soho come and get an annual permit for their back door patio. So if you're on your property, you still have to meet ADA requirements and let people through and all those things. But outdoor dining, private property, your business. Also kind of like that liquor store north of Hilton. They have that outdoor patio. You know what I mean? It's for them. Parking lots must be accessory. Used to a principal use unless it's a municipal. The parking of vehicles on a lot without a principal building is prohibited unless it is a municipal parking lot.
Now, we need to add to this that is not allowed in the front of a building in the front yard.
Front of the building of a front yard.
Parking lots are not allowed in a front yard. That's what we had in our previous,
I think that's covered in give me an example of a parking in a front yard, like a house?
or like the businesses on Wanda that currently have the parking in the front with the business in the back. It wouldn't be a permitted use if they built it now. We would want the business on the front and the parking behind.
But isn't that covered by the setback? You could only be 20 feet, so you can't put a parking lot there.
So for example, like Axel, I mean, I know that's existing, but it's one of the few where the parking is, in front of the building. I mean, there's other examples, but
that's an
one that always
existing.
comes to mind. So before it wasn't a footnote, and now is this maybe the only place it would have?
It looks like where it would be.
Yeah, I didn't look to see if it was anywhere else, so.
But doesn't the front setback, that's like 0 to 20 or 15 right now, mean you can't do parking in front of this? You only have 15 feet.
Well, so,
You can park a car in.
yeah, the car dealerships, when they came in and they wanted to park in front of their buildings, it was like, is this display or do we really want vehicles there? So, or parking. So it should be stated somewhere. If it's not anywhere else, this might be a good place
This is
for it.
something we've discussed many times over many years.
Is it in the parking lot screening maybe, down more? No?
Well, we can look, and we can add it at a different time rather than right now, just to make sure, but I think we should.
So are you saying, do you want to add something here, or want to check the other section?
It seems like if the section is titled parking lots,
Yeah.
we should put the parking lot stuff in the parking lot section.
Even if it's a duplicate
Yes.
comment, I think it,
Parking lots are not allowed in the front yard of
In any zone district, parking lots
district.
in the front,
commercial, I mean, obviously.
And it's a parking lot, so I don't think it necessarily restricts like a single lot residential.
But it's the whole front line so that even if you're parking to the side, you're not parking forward. What was that one that we looked at?
If you look at C,
The doctor's office that just
Right.
moved in?
Yeah.
And the 10 mile or whatnot, or no?
Yeah, the one on Woodward.
Oh, the one on Woodward, yeah.
workshop.
Okay, I think that's a good place to put it, so.
Short-term rentals, we're adding in here and just clarifying these are regulated by a certain section of the code.
So it's just a reference?
Yeah. Because we have a use to it, and there's an asterisk that says it applies in other things, we added it here. Okay. R1 or R2 residential district screening. Here is the stormwater retention and detention ponds. It says that you have to do all your stormwater. Remember, we waived it in that other section. Oh, no.
Where does it specify when it's required?
Nope, it's not here. It's in another section. It's back in, I'll show you.
I thought the previous section, you struck the requirements for stormwater retention ponds in favor of putting it in that section.
No, it's somewhere else. Let me see. I'll find it. Vehicle, R1 or R2 residential district. Again, the use is the hard piece. Same thing. Nothing changes. R1 or R2 residential district, R1 or R2 residential district. Same thing.
I'll just say that is a change from our previous ordinance, and there are times, I'm thinking particularly where we had some, where we had a site plan review for like the Garden Fresh, where there's those residential houses that are zoned non-residential. We had talked about screening from there, or maybe it was the storage unit. Yeah. Where we thought it was necessary to screen, and we had it for use versus the district, or maybe we didn't, but we've had discussions around that, but I think it makes sense how you have it, that it's just the district, not the use, because that's the intention of, we're moving towards compliance with these standards,
Here, nomenclature 2-unit.
Oh, you said you're going to do a control F.
rather than single.
Single, yep, I got it on my list. And I didn't change anything, I don't think. Here. No, the beauty,
I think the rest of it is in definitions.
yep. The beauty of creating this committee is you guys get to vote, and 2 members already left today. So you could just assign it.
Maybe if we do reviews like this in the future of the code, could we have like a, instead of the full document, well, maybe in addition to the full document as a red line, have like a separate Word document specifically of the changes, or like an Excel sheet that has like
So I thought about that.
page section, because I think that would make this process a lot easier. We could like have all of them, we could sort them by type, administrative, substantive, et cetera.
So I told Greg I was going to do that. We talked about that before I did this. And then I realized I don't think I can create that description. Like, because some of these are like big paragraphs, right? And so I'm going to skip over a lot of words,
A lot of work to create.
I'm going to put in just random words, and you're not going to understand the concepts. So now you got to take the whole section and put it in there. So I thought the same thing of like, maybe I could just do an Excel spreadsheet. And then I thought, I'm doing this anyways. I'm going to double my work spending 4 or 5
Especially
hours
with
creating a
being
spreadsheet.
short-staffed.
But I guess it's like, no offense to you, but we've been here since 6:30, so it'll be 3 hours. So if it's like 3 hours of your time to make the spreadsheet, but it makes this meeting an hour instead of an hour and a half, we've netted like.
Yeah, I just don't think I could create the spreadsheet. Because how I feel is like, how I started thinking about it was, you look at it and you'd be like, I don't know what this means. And you're going in the document, and there'll be a lot of, I don't know what this means. And I think we would have had this.
Even just for,
Should we like quick link it though from the Excel document?
Or just like, we'd at least have a single page or two-page document that has even just like page line, like these are the things that changed. It's administrative, it's substantive, and we can like then go, we can just follow the page.
Like grammatical.
We can like have that next to and look versus having to scroll through, hope we find everything, hope we understand like on the things where like, oh, it was changed from 0 to 2 to conform with the rest, or like the item could be, this will require discussion, like it's a substantive change kind of thing. Because then it just, I don't know, it was like a lot to look through this initially. And I think it would have streamlined conversation, or would in the future streamline conversations
I can,
focus on the substantive.
I can try. I just know like McKenna does this. Like, I think they actually did a lot of that. And I'm just not skilled in,
Well, and I think a lot of that was just actually identifying the actual section. And so it's like this section, and, you know, we won't have as many hopefully moving forward, but,
learned my lesson. Code can stay. We're gonna leave it.
and actually, once you click on the next one that you find, and then, oh, wait, we're in the PDF, never mind.
I was going to suggest that, you know, if it's just like a grammatical or a numbering change or something, that could have been only put in an Excel, and we could have just said, okay, all of these changes, boom, we agree with those. And then these more complex ones are ones that we could have pulled out into a separate document.
Or like if
Okay, well, I think for,
Excel is something like having a comment that at least explains your thought process of the change, so that we can have that while we're looking at the change.
I could have done comments, yeah. Accessory dwelling unit, because we have a grouping of residential down below, so I just moved it down there.
Why is,
it's moved, it's not
It's
deleted.
These were just making sure the names are the same. Bed and breakfast is removed because it's in, I think, /bed and breakfast. The use has brewery, distillery, winery, or roastery, so I just created one general one for them. The use chart allows it in those zone districts.
But then if someone's looking for a distillery, they have to go to B.
Well, they can search the document, yeah.
You know, small and medium we talked about. Distillery went up because the use chart, I think, combined it all. Drive-through facility is the word. And somewhere, maybe, drive-through facility is not a window intended for walk-up service. Just clarifying that. Accessory dwelling unit, which will be accessory dwelling, came down here in the grouping of residential, because we already had all these groupings. And then 2-unit, 4-unit. Find which ones these were.
Is there a reason why you're saying accessory dwelling and everything else is dwelling, comma? Wouldn't it be dwelling, comma, accessory? To be consistent?
Correct. Yeah, that's true. I wouldn't have put this was already in there. I wouldn't have put dwelling first. I would just call them each out. But if we want to,
Well, it can go with dwelling first because then it's in alphabetical order, right?
yep. Can correct. The essential service, no building.
Unless you just get rid of dwelling altogether and just put it under a section that says dwelling, and then you just have accessories for, 2, 3, 4.
I don't mind that one because then you're just focusing on it. Essential service with a building is a line item in the use chart. Change it from family and home to small, medium, or large. Freight connection is actually a use line, so we're defining what a freight connection is. Use chart has government municipal facilities, so we define what that is. Use chart says hotel/motel. Use chart says inn/bed and breakfast, so it all went there. Institutional higher education and trade/vocational school in the use chart. K through 12 school, we didn't define it before, but it's a use chart. Laundry dry cleaner was not defined. It's medical or dental clinic/holistic treatment center. museum/cultural center. Outdoor dining. Is a use, it says public property is a use chart thing that refers to chapter 7. And we got some language. Parking lot as the principal use is the use chart language. Pharmacies and dry cleaners are a use, so it repeated those in the personal, and it's like, well, it's a separate use. Personal service do not include any use listed in the schedule of permitted uses. It's not and, it's just pet grooming and boarding.
Dry cleaner have its own line, like pharmacy has its own line.
Yeah. Roastery is in the definition.
Brewery.
Yeah, we've been using the term permeable surface, but I see there it says pervious.
Okay, so just for consistency.
Impervious is.
Impervious would be, they're
Permeable.
synonyms.
Which one do we want to use?
It's too late. It's just.
Just as long as it's consistent.
Yeah, just
Between
I think
permeable
Permeable and impervious.
or impervious. We'll do a word search. Signs. And then these are specific uses they didn't add. So we're adding the uses and calling them exactly what the use chart is. The use chart has a solvent recovery center. We didn't have a definition of what that is.
Go back to SE, roof mounted. So you changed it to rooftop, so, wait,
Where am I at?
down a little bit more. Rooftop solar, and you just crossed off mounted SES, and then you said an SES mounted. SES defined above it is, right? Okay, never
I think so.
mind.
Good.
Moving on, sorry.
Yeah, oh, you're saying up here?
Yeah, I'm looking here, so it's hard for me to tell what's crossed out or not, so it's
Yep.
just my bad. Thanks.
Dance, art, and photography. Trade vocational school one, I think they're the K through 12 one. Again, it's all just matching the use chart so they can find the word. I have not plugged in these definitions. Laura just sent them over from McKenna today, so they're gonna,
For the roof mounted, horizontal, vertical versus spoiler induced.
yeah,
Okay. So that will be available for the city council markup.
yeah, it'll be a
Okay.
version there. Winery is with the other. That's it. That's
All right.
all we got.
Well, thank you very much.
So with that said, do we want to get a committee going?
Yes, I think that it's necessary to kind of look at the dimensional use chart versus the use chart versus the form types.
Should we just send out an email and ask who wants to be on it? Do we want to,
I think we can do that.
someone
Yeah.
want to volunteer now or any evidence?
Yeah, or we can, say that Showalter and Michelle, or, yeah, I think we'll send out an email
We only have
and talk
two.
about
We only have two people.
2 people for what?
Only want 2 people on the committee?
Yeah, you can only have 2 because once you go to 3, we're going to have a meeting.
Oh,
3's a quorum?
3, I think under the, yeah, there's something that we,
9 of us. That cannot be a quorum.
no, but I think.
No, 6 is
I think
quorum.
it's the overriding, like, noticing a public hearing is when 3 members or more of a board are meeting, I think from state law. It's not the majority of the board. Am I right?
I think so.
I think,
That's not, yeah.
I don't have the law, but.
Okay.
I believe it's if 3 people of
We
a
just
board
need
meet,
to-
you need to notify it.
Well, we've had meetings with more than, maybe you just verify with the clerk and send out an email to see who would like to join.
Okay?
Please, thanks.
And then if you guys want to make a motion, we do have a public hearing.
Oh, thank you. All right, well, thank you for leading us through those. I really appreciate the amount of work and time that you've put through cleaning up the ordinance, which clearly needed a lot of cleanup. In that, it's an extensive document with varying language, and oftentimes these ordinances are pulled from languages that's already existed. So it's necessary. We knew that this is going to come, and so it's much appreciated that you were able to pull this together. So with that, I am going to open the public hearing at 9:18. And seeing that there are no audience members, close the meeting immediately at 9:18. And so we've had sufficient discussion. So with the stated changes that we've identified along the way and noted appropriately, would someone like to recommend approval of those changes to the city council where another public hearing will be held, I believe?
Technically, it's not.
not
I mean, it was
required?
just,
Okay.
For the Michigan Enabling Act.
Okay,
I'll talk with Dan, and if he thinks it's best to publish it again. I mean, we published it today, we had no one, but technically, the Michigan Enabling Act is the, I think it specifically
I
says.
thought it was one time, so,
At the
okay.
planning commission is a public hearing.
Okay, so not necessarily noticed, but it will be held at the city council. So if we have a motion to send it there?
I wouldn't make a motion, is it a motion to incorporate or a motion to recommend?
So,
Motion to recommend approval of the changes as outlined in the red line version, including the changes
as
the
discussed this
commission
evening.
discussed today, I would think is.
Yes, that would be my motion. I move to recommend inclusion of the edits reviewed today. I lost it already. The red line document with the exception of items to move to committee? Is that?
Well,
no?
and as the changes and edits as discussed today.
Is in edits as discussed today.
Second.
There's a motion by Azar and a second by Newman. Any discussion on the motion? For roll call?
Commissioner Newman?
Yes.
Commissioner Azar?
Yes.
Commissioner Brazen?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Subakatani?
Yes.
Commissioner Polika?
Yes.
Chair Foster?
Yes. Will that be moving to the next city council meeting then? Are you,
No. Next one's Monday, I can't.
oh, okay. So it'll be 3 weeks from, or 2 weeks from Monday, maybe?
Will
Maybe.
it depend
No,
on
it's not this
when the
Monday,
committee
it's
will meet?
2 weeks. It's the 20, it's actually the day after Memorial Day.
It's moved to Tuesday.
Whatever it is, I need a little bit of time.
Okay.
Yeah, because it needs to be 10-day notice to the public, if it's a public hearing.
I don't think.
I think we decided that per this enabling act at the state, it's not required. And so,
I check with Dan Chris.
I'll check it again, but I need some time to get these done and feel
absolutely.
comfortable. So
Absolutely.
it'll be
yeah.
2 meetings from now and maybe 3.
You don't just push a button?
Easy button?
I'll just go home right now and just get it all done.
Macros.
All right, well, I do not have an agenda in front of me, but I believe that the next item on the agenda would be any administrative items. And it looks like your planner may have needed to leave to, so, but do you have anything else that you wanted to?
Sure. So we put out the posting months ago, maybe 2.5 months ago. Got a good response. It wasn't a lot, but we got a decent response. We interviewed 4 people, and we selected Melissa. Melissa comes from Macomb Township. She is extremely excited to be here. She's repeatedly said that this has been her goal to land in Ferndale. She lives in Midtown, so the drive from Midtown to Macomb Township is pretty good. So she's much closer now, like 15 minutes away. She has a young daughter and a partner. I think they live near Corktown or so. But we do a whole training schedule. So we've already taken her to all the city facilities. We usually don't do that. So fire station, police station, parks. We have her tomorrow getting acclimated to ZDRs. So we're going to go slow. And then it'll be some site plan stuff and we'll build off of there. So we're excited and should be good.
Wonderful. Any other administrative items for this evening? Any commission items for this evening? All right, well, with that, I will adjourn this evening's meeting at 9:22 PM.
Thank you, everyone.